Chapter 630. Why did he spend so much effort to convince Meng Ping? Why did he accompany Meng Ping to inspect the stockade at this busiest time? Poplar Fruit, of course, had something to ask of him. Poplar Fruit brought Meng Ping to the main circuit control office in the stockade and said, "Look, Uncle Meng, if we want to carry out this plan, it's not enough for me to donate money and computers alone. I told you before that the voltage in the stockade is low and unstable." Poplar Fruit said, "It's mainly because we don't have enough wires outside, so we need at least 2 more high-voltage wires. It used to be enough because everyone didn't use much electricity. Usually, we just turned on the lights and didn't even have a refrigerator." Poplar Fruit said, "But now it's not enough. Once we turn on more than 300 computers, the electricity consumption will increase exponentially. I'm afraid it won't be able to handle the load." Meng Ping nodded slightly, but didn't say anything. "There's also the problem of the internet." Poplar Fruit said, "You're one of us, so I won't hide it from you. To be honest, we can only access the internet in the village now because my friend used a satellite dish to convert it into a signal amplifier. He captured the network signal from the signal tower on the national highway at the foot of the mountain. Although I also used my own account to log in, it's still somewhat illegal. Uncle Meng, look, there aren't so many corrupt officials in the county now. Can you help me find some connections and ask the Power Supply Bureau and the Telecommunications Bureau to help build these infrastructure as soon as possible?" Poplar Fruit said, "As for the electricity, there's already a high-voltage wire tower. It's easy to add 2 more wires." Meng Ping patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, "Poplar Fruit, you're the most sincere person I've ever met. Although I'm still not very optimistic about your long-distance education, don't worry, I promise you that I'll definitely help you implement it." Meng Ping was also a man of his word. If he promised something, he would definitely do his best to help you. "Hey, Poplar Fruit is here." Someone walked over. His huge body completely blocked out the sunlight, and all of a sudden, it felt like the sky had turned dark. Hearing this simple and honest voice, Poplar Fruit knew that it was Xiong San. However, Meng Ping was startled by Xiong San. When he turned around, he saw a huge man standing behind him. Meng Ping, who had never seen such a tall man in Lidong, was so scared that he almost fell to the ground. Poplar Fruit hurriedly supported him and said to Xiong San with some blame, "Big brother Xiong San, why did you suddenly appear?" "There's no sound." Xiong San scratched his head and said, "I wanted to arm wrestle with you, but I didn't see you the whole morning." "You are also from the Xiong clan?" Meng Ping took a deep breath and asked curiously. Even if it was in the mountains, Meng Ping did not think that anyone could grow to more than 2 meters tall. After all, the genes were there. "No, Uncle Meng, you misunderstood. This is my friend from Yongcheng, a soldier. It just so happened that he was on holiday, so he came over to take a look." Poplar Fruit smiled and introduced, "Big brother Xiong San, this is Meng Ping, Uncle Meng. This is the director of Lidong County's Education Bureau." "Hello." Xiong San was very nice and took the initiative to extend his hand. "Hello." Meng Ping looked at Xiong San's fan-sized palm and felt a little weak. He hesitated for a moment before he shakily placed his little hand in Xiong San's palm. Xiong San shook his hand twice. Withdrawing his hand, Meng Ping let out a sigh of relief. Just a moment ago, he was worried that his hand would be crushed by this huge man. However, Xiong San controlled his strength very well. It was neither too big nor too small. It was just enough to let Meng Ping feel his passion without hurting him. "Xiong San, if you want to arm wrestle, I don't have time right now." Poplar Fruit looked at Meng Ping beside him and said to Xiong San with some embarrassment, "I know, I have to accompany a guest." Xiong San laughed, causing Meng Ping's eardrums to swell. "It's okay, we'll talk about it when I have time. I don't have anything to accompany, I've already seen and asked all the questions." Meng Ping suddenly said, "Poplar Fruit, you go play, no need to entertain me." "All right, aren't you going to arm wrestle?" "I also want to take a look." Meng Ping was smiling faintly, but his eyes were dancing with a smile. That's right, Meng Ping was black-bellied. When he heard arm wrestle, he looked at Xiong San's terrifying muscles and palms and then looked at Poplar Fruit's well-proportioned physique. He didn't think that Poplar Fruit could arm wrestle with Xiong San. Okay. Xiong San grinned and said, "Then let's go." Xiong San walked up and squeezed in between Meng Ping and Poplar Fruit. His two thick arms hugged Meng Ping and Poplar Fruit as they walked forward. When they arrived at the training field, before they even entered, a person came out from the ancestral hall. It was Kai Si-min. He ran over to Poplar Fruit and said, "Boss, there's something I want to tell you." Zhang Yujie asked him to call Poplar Fruit boss, and Kai Si-min really did it, regardless of whether Poplar Fruit liked the title or not. Poplar Fruit said helplessly, "How many times have I told you not to call me boss? I don't pay you." "What's the matter?" "Our table is unreasonable." Kai Si-min gestured and said, "It's so big, after putting in the screen, it can't fit anything else." Poplar Fruit knew that at that time, Fat Dragon used 2 tables to put together. "It has to be widened." Kai Si-min gestured and said, "It has to be at least twice as big. That way it will be more comfortable to type on the keyboard, and it will also protect the eyes. My suggestion is to have it custom-made." Kai Si-min spoke quickly. "Isn't our keyboard very thick? Then make a concave hole so that it can fit in, so that the children can have a good posture when typing. Also, the place where the screen is placed has to be screwed to reinforce the screen. Otherwise, if you touch the table, the screen will fall down and break." "How can that work?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Yes, your suggestion is good. You discuss with Fat Dragon and make a simple design. Then, I'll show it to Uncle He tonight." When they arrived at the training field, Xiong San and Poplar Fruit found a stone plate and sat down facing each other. Seeing that there was a good show to watch, many of the children from Xiong village gathered around noisily. "I want to wash away my shame," Xiong San said honestly. "Come." Poplar Fruit smiled. Rolling up his sleeves, one black and one white arm contrasted sharply on the stone plate. What was even more striking was the disproportionate thickness of the muscles. There was no referee. After the two of them signaled each other with their eyes, they began arm wrestling. "It's getting bigger," a child who wasn't even 10 years old exclaimed as he pointed at Poplar Fruit's arm. It was a change that could be seen with the naked eye. When Poplar Fruit used all his strength, his arm actually swelled up, causing his sleeves to tighten. "Hey, hey, hey!" Xiong San exerted all his strength. His strength was enough to lift an adult bull, but in front of Poplar Fruit, he was still lacking by a little. Poplar Fruit was also exerting all his strength, but he didn't need to shout or hold it in until his face turned red. Under this shocking contrast, Poplar Fruit slowly twisted Xiong San's wrist onto the stone plate. Meng Ping couldn't believe his eyes. He had a surprised look on his face. He didn't look as calm as when he wanted to see Poplar Fruit make a fool of himself. A thought flashed through his mind. Could it be that this big guy is a soft-footed shrimp? Those muscles are a lie, right? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 631. He Wanzhua, Meng Sanhua, and the other soldiers from the Special Forces gave up their comfortable vacation and came all the way to Gui Mountain. They were not just here to see Poplar Fruit and listen to Xiong Kahu talk about the past. Back then, Xiong Kahu's illustrious battle achievements could be said to be a legend in the history of our military. He Wanzhua and the others really wanted to see for themselves just what kind of skills the legendary old master Xiong Kahu had. In the end, on the night they came, all of them were drunk. When they woke up the next day, they saw old Master Xiong Kahu's white-haired appearance and how he walked with a trembling gait. They were a little embarrassed to voice their request. Yin Lu Qing asked the other people in the Hmong village. It was said that among Xiong Kahu's disciples, the most powerful one was called Xiong Jishe. Along the way, Yin Lu Qing found that Xiong Jishe was the young man who had practiced swordsmanship with Poplar Fruit in the morning. Xiong Jishe's swordsmanship was not bad among ordinary people, but in the eyes of these experienced soldiers, it was still not enough to be a master. Yin Lu Qing regretted that he did not find Xiong Jishe to practice with. He could only walk around the village to see if he could meet someone as powerful as the Shaolin Temple sweeping monk. The next day, Wanjua took them for a run around the village. They happened to see Xiong Kahu and Poplar Fruit come back from practicing swordsmanship on the mountain. Yin Liuqing's eyes lit up. He saw Xiong Kahu with a completely different aura after holding a sword. He walked over excitedly and asked to see Xiong Kahu's swordsmanship. "I'm from Zhangzhou." Yin Liuqing saw Xiong Kahu looking at him, so he bowed and said, "It's my family's swordsmanship." Xiong Kahu looked at Yin Liuqing and asked, "Your surname is Yin? Yin Zhentai's descendant?" "He's my great-grandfather." "Have you seen him before?" Yin Liuqing was shocked. He did not expect that an old man who lived in the mountains all year round would know so much about the outside world. Master Yin Zhentai was known as the #1 swordsman in North China. Unfortunately, he did not escape the bullets of the Japanese. Xiong Kahu shook his head and said, "I've never seen him. When I was born, Master Yin was already dead." Master Yin's swordsmanship was passed down by the swordsmen who roamed the world. "I've admired him for a long time." "You're his descendant? That's great." Xiong Kahu laughed and said, "You can compete with Poplar Fruit. I want to see if Master Yin's swordsmanship is better or my Miaodao." "Yang Gua." Yin Liuqing hesitantly looked at Yang Gua. Use swordsmanship. Xiong Kahu's name was Xiong. However, if she were to fight with Yang Gua, Yin Liuqing felt that she had an unfair advantage, and she could not see the true level of Miaodao. Xiong Kahu saw that Xiong Kahu did not believe in Poplar Fruit and was amused. "What? You're looking down on Poplar Fruit? Poplar Fruit is 70% as good as me. You can practice with him first. If you're not satisfied, we can help each other." "Okay." Xiong Kahu nodded. He didn't even run anymore, looking like he was eager to give it a try. Wanjua was not that unreasonable. Since they were not in the army, he disbanded the running team to satisfy these guys' desire to watch the show. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Wait. I'll go back and wake Kiki up." Looking at the time, Kiki was about to get up. Without anyone to look after her, Poplar Fruit was worried. Yin Liuqing also had to go back to get his swordsmanship, so everyone agreed to meet at the training field in half an hour. Kiki was quite obedient when she woke up today. She squinted her eyes and smiled as she helped her father change her clothes. "Come, open your mouth. Daddy will brush your teeth for you." Poplar Fruit pinched his daughter's chubby cheeks and held a small cup for her to drink and spit out. Kiki opened her mouth and giggled. "Open your mouth. Now is not the time to say pinyin." Poplar Fruit patted Kiki's little butt and smiled. "Daddy is going to compete with Uncle Liuqing in swordsmanship later. You won't be able to play if you're late." Kiki opened her mouth obediently. She bit on the small toothbrush her father gave her and said vaguely, Then, Kiki, can I go and play?" "Kiki can't play with swords, but you can go and watch." Poplar Fruit took out the toothbrush and smiled. Yes, Kiki wants to watch." Kiki was very happy. She jumped up and hugged her father, smearing the toothpaste foam all over her father's neck. After washing her face and combing her hair, Poplar Fruit tied his daughter's hair into a beautiful flower bun. The current Poplar Fruit was already very familiar with braids and hairstyles that were not very complicated. The flower bun was to tie the long hair that was hanging down into a bud-shaped bun on the top of the head. This way, the hair that was hanging down would only be the length of bangs and would not be draped loosely behind the back. This hairstyle was a little cute, but it was definitely not as good-looking as a ponytail or braid. However, the advantage was that it was cooler in this hot summer. When Poplar Fruit was bathing Kiki yesterday, he saw that Kiki's back had a little heat rash. He discussed it with Fong Bei and decided to change Kiki's hairstyle into a more comfortable one. "Oh, my head is so heavy." Kiki looked at herself in the mirror with her new hairstyle. She also felt that it was funny. She took her father's hand and walked around the bed exaggeratedly, acting very unhappy. "Okay. Let's go, it's almost time." Poplar Fruit put on his daughter's small shoes, picked up his 2 Miaodao with his right hand, and said with a smile, I'll help Papa take it. Kiki was very active. After being helped down from the bed by her father with one hand, she jumped up and down and pulled the tail of the Meowdow scabbard. She raised her little butt and wanted to lift it up. Poplar Fruit put away the Meowdow, then pulled Kiki up and said with a smile, "Dad can take it himself." Poplar Fruit took the milk bottle that had just cooled down from the table next to him. He hung it around Kiki's neck with a small rope and said, "Kiki will be responsible for drinking milk." Kiki nodded obediently. She held the milk bottle and took a sip. Then she cupped her hands and blocked her father's big hand. She raised her little head, smacked her lips, and said, "Kiki wants to go by herself." Poplar Fruit laughed, waved his hand, and said with a smile, "Let's go." Two figures, one big and one small, walked out of the room. There was a long figure that followed them to the corridor at the door. It whimpered, wagged its tail, hesitated for a moment, lowered its head, and turned back to the room with its tail between its legs. "Uncle, where are you going?" Just as he went downstairs, Xiong Xiaofeng came out of nowhere with a strand of spider web hanging on his head. He shouted, "Kiki, let's go play together. I want to see Papa's knife dance." Kiki shook her head and said, following her father closely, "It's dancing. Kiki, your Mandarin is not standard." Xiong Xiaofeng said with some pride, "It's knife dance. This is reading the knife." Kiki was anxious. She pointed to her father's scabbard and said seriously. Then she raised her head and asked her father to be the judge. "Kiki is right. It's indeed a knife. Dancing is another kind." Xiaofeng misunderstood. Poplar Fruit took off the spider web on Xiong Xiaofeng's head, patted him on the head, and said with a smile, "Then I want to see it too." Xiong Xiaofeng jumped up and followed behind. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 632. With two followers, Poplar Fruit leisurely came to the martial arts field of the Hmong village. He Wanjua and the others had already arrived. They were surrounded by the children of the Hmong village. Some of them could not squeeze forward, so they climbed up the high railing. There were very few entertainment activities for the children on the mountain. They were not satisfied with yesterday's excitement. Seeing these soldiers gathered at the martial arts field again, they spread the word of mouth. In just half an hour, almost all the boys had gathered there. Seeing them whispering to each other and waiting for the start of the show, Poplar Fruit felt that these boys were waiting for a movie to be released, and he and Yin Luqing would put on a big show for them. Not only these children, but also Xiong Jisher and two other young people who had not yet started to work in the school gathered together. They stood next to the weapon rack in the martial arts field. Poplar Fruit patted Kiki and asked her to follow Xiong Xiaofeng to Xiong Jisher's side. Poplar Fruit was worried that Kiki would run around and get hurt by the swords. It was safer with Xiong Jisher's help. However, without Poplar Fruit's order, He Wanjua saw so many restless boys around and waved his hand to let Xiong De, Xiong Air, and Xiong San stand in front of those boys to prevent them from accidentally running into the middle of the field. Xiong De and Xiong San were too strong, so they attracted most of the attention. A few fearless boys even ran to Xiong San to compare their height, but found that they were not even as tall as Xiong San's knees. Poplar Fruit walked to his master's side. Yin Luqing had already taken out his padao and was wiping the shiny blade with a rough towel. The padao looked a bit like a broadsword, but it was longer than a broadsword and looked more simple. It was one of the most common weapons carried by chivalrous heroes in Jianghu, which reflected the practicality of the padao to some extent. How do we compete? Do we decide the winner in one round? Poplar Fruit took out the key and asked while unlocking the scabbard. Let's decide it in one round. Yin Luqing said confidently. He didn't want to waste too much time on Poplar Fruit. Padaos have different lengths, Xiongkahu suddenly interrupted and said, let's compete in 2 rounds so that we can see the results. Yin Luqing was stunned for a moment before nodding his head. He didn't mind, but he thought that Xiongkahu was worried that Poplar Fruit would make a fool of himself and wanted to increase his chances of winning. Poplar Fruit didn't mind either. To have the opportunity to see more of the kung fu of other sects was something to be happy about. Yin Luqing arrived early, so he stood in the middle of the field. His posture was very standard, completely the posture of a soldier. His back was straight, and from the back of his head to his heels, he formed a straight line. He held his saber in his left hand and held it behind his back, waiting for Poplar Fruit to come over. Poplar Fruit, you'll be the first one. Single blade. Xiong Kahu waved his hand and instructed. Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment, but he still followed the order and stuck the Miaodao in his left hand into the ground. Then, he cupped his fists and walked into the field. Before Poplar Fruit turned around, Yin Luqing looked at Poplar Fruit with a little sympathy. He thought to himself, maybe Poplar Fruit's dual saber skills haven't reached perfection yet? Old Xiong wouldn't let him make a fool of himself with dual sabers. Yin Luqing then thought of the previous practice between Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jishe, which was also single blade. He was even more certain of his guess. He secretly planned to go easy on Poplar Fruit. Meng Sonhua was bored standing on the side. All his attention was on Poplar Fruit and Yin Luqing. He didn't have the time to maintain order with Yi Wanzhua and the others. After seeing Poplar Fruit throw down a Miaodao, Meng Sonhua excitedly ran over to pick it up, wanting to weigh it in his hand. Meng Sonhua almost sprained his waist when he tried to pick it up. It wasn't that the Miaodao was so heavy that he couldn't lift it. It was just that it was very different from what he had expected. He had thought that even if the Miaodao was heavy, it would only be 2 or 3 kilograms. But Poplar Fruit's Miaodao was as heavy as an AK-47. One had to know that an AK-47 could only be used with 2 hands in combat. If the Miaodao was so heavy, how was one supposed to use it? Unlike a gun that could be fired immediately after being picked up, a Miaodao should be designed with more emphasis on flexibility. Meng Sonhua already felt that the Miaodao was a bit of a hindrance. If he were to fight someone else, he would probably be killed before he could even pull it out. Is there only one way to split a mountain? Meng Sonhua was puzzled. The competition had already begun. Yin Luqing and Poplar Fruit came into contact. In the beginning, both of their movements were slow. The tips of their blades clashed for a moment before moving away. They were testing each other, trying to figure out each other's strengths. After all, this wasn't a battlefield. There was no need to fight to the death right from the start. It was a good thing that they knew when to stop when they were ahead. Otherwise, if they used too much force and the opponent couldn't dodge, there would be blood. One had to know that both of them were using real sharpened blades. A heavy blade without a sharp edge meant that a heavy blade without a sharp edge could hurt someone. Even though it was just a short clash, Yin Luqing's expression changed. He felt a strong force coming from the blade. He didn't feel it clearly the first time, but the second time, Yin Luqing realized that it wasn't an illusion. Poplar Fruit's blade was indeed very strong. But why did he feel that Poplar Fruit's agility with the blade was no less than his? What was going on? There was no time to figure out the answer to this question. After the two of them tested each other, they entered an increasingly fierce fight. In terms of technique, the Padao wasn't inferior to the 24 Miaodao forms. It was born out of the famous Cha Quan. Like Cha Quan, it focused on nimble steps, strong rhythm, relaxed posture, and rapid force. The Padao only had a few moves: chop, stomp, sweep, block, and twist. But it was better in its agility and infinite changes, making it impossible to guard against. Yin Luqing chopped, swept, and flicked his blade. His body moved left and right. He quickly struck 3 times from the top, middle, and bottom. Although he avoided the vital parts and held back some of his strength, the blade's shadow was like a strange spirit snake. It appeared in front of him before he could notice it. Clang, clang, clang. Poplar Fruit reacted quickly. He held the blade in one hand and the back of the blade in the other. He quickly blocked 3 times and dodged Yin Luqing's series of attacks. At this time, the children watching the fight were just starting to exclaim. His reaction was very fast. Yin Luqing's mind flashed through several scenes of Poplar Fruit winning against Meng Sonhua. It seemed that he won by relying on his faster reaction than Meng Sonhua. Unfortunately, it wasn't just a competition of reaction speed. No matter how fast your reaction speed is, it's not as fast as my speed. Yin Luqing swung his blade and was blocked by Poplar Fruit. Then he jumped up like a monkey and flashed to Poplar Fruit's right side. He stretched his body and swung his blade again. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 633. So fast. Poplar Fruit exclaimed in his heart. With a flip of his wrist, he carried the saber with one hand while his left hand reached out from his waist to hold the back of the saber. Another metallic clang was heard, and Yin Liuqing's saber was blocked by him again. The trajectory of Yin Liuqing's jump appeared in Poplar Fruit's mind. The speed he was praising was not how fast the saber was. Yin Liuqing's saber speed might not be comparable to Poplar Fruit's. It was just that his steps were very light and his movements were strange. He was faster than himself in terms of changes. Yin Luqing did not use any strength in this saber. When she got close to Poplar Fruit, she quickly stopped, worried that Poplar Fruit did not have the ability to catch the saber. However, Poplar Fruit still gave her a big surprise. Poplar Fruit actually caught the saber, and it felt like he was handling it with ease. His reaction speed was really fast. Yin Luqing knew that Poplar Fruit's talent was personal, and she could not be envious. After receiving 2 unexpected strikes from Yin Luqing, Yonghua felt that he couldn't go on like this. His single blade technique was focused on speed and swiftness. Every strike had to be simple and precise. His movements were valiant and vigorous. One after another, he attacked continuously, chopping and chopping. With a small amount of variation, he was able to open a bloody path in the midst of thousands of soldiers and horses like a hot knife through butter. However, Poplar Fruit could not fight too fiercely when playing with his own people. Not only did he restrain his strength, but he also consciously exerted force to control his heavy miaodao. Otherwise, if he chopped with all his strength, if Yin Luqing could not dodge in time, Poplar Fruit would probably not be able to hold back his saber. Then, wouldn't Yin Luqing be split in half by this sharp miaodao? But in this way, it would be like cutting off an arm. The advantage of Poplar Fruit's saber technique would be gone. Yin Liuqing's saber technique also gave Poplar Fruit a lot of inspiration. When he was competing with Yin Luqing, his mind was also working crazily. He observed his opponent's steps and saber technique while studying the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. That's right. Why do I have to learn the miaodao movement technique? Poplar Fruit's eyes lit up. Although it can ensure that the legs support the waist and make the waist twist more powerful, I don't need it. He had learned Tai Chi and 8-step meteor kick. Tai Chi's mellow and vigorous inner strength allowed him to have an endless supply of strength without having to take root in the ground. Moreover, Tai Chi's moves were not as sluggish as miaodao's. Instead, it emphasized on the lightness of the body and allowed him to climb and jump with ease. As for the 8 steps meteor kick, there was no need to mention it. This was a martial art that focused on body movement. If one kept dragging his feet on the ground, he wouldn't be able to kick out. That wouldn't be called meteor kick. Poplar Fruit was bold. Even when he was facing Yin Liuqing's swift blade, he still had the time to think about how to make a change. Yin Liuqing's padao was beautiful, but not only was it beautiful, but it was also effective and flexible, which was exactly what Poplar Fruit wanted to learn. Xiong Kahu, who was sitting on the armchair, was the first to notice Yonghua's change. He was followed by Meng Sonhua beside him. Xiong Kahu was too familiar with miaodao, so he could see through any change at a glance. As for Meng Sonhua, although his martial arts talent wasn't as good as Poplar Fruit's, he was still the type that was hard to come by in 10 years. Poplar Fruit went from being passive to being able to jump out of Yin Liuqing's rhythm, and then gradually having his own counterattack. He was very sensitive to this change. In fact, the one who felt it the most was Yin Luqing. Poplar Fruit was just standing there like a pillar and passively defending. Although he was like a tortoise shell, it wasn't to the extent that he became as smooth as he was now. The 8 steps meteor kick merged into the miaodao was a little stiff. This was what Poplar Fruit felt at first. After jumping up and down, Poplar Fruit felt that other than sweeping and stabbing, he couldn't connect any other moves with the Meowdow. Although he was able to jump out of Ian Liuqing's rhythm and didn't have to be tired of parrying, he still couldn't make a counterattack. Jump, jump, turn, spin, and jump again. Poplar Fruit frowned and continued to ponder. There was probably no one else in the world who could be like Yonghua, who could think of new moves while fighting with other people at the same time. After all, Ian Liuqing wasn't a newbie who had just learned how to use a saber. His family's kung fu had been passed down in his family for more than 10 years. His kung fu was also one of the best in the special forces, and he had been honed in actual combat. In the past, he would have been a prominent swordsman. Kung fu was different, but the principles weren't too different. After all, they were all moves made by the human body. Poplar Fruit pondered and found the compatibility between the 8 steps meteor kick and the Meowdow. The 8 steps meteor kick actually didn't need to be performed at full strength. After all, it was just a support, and the main theme was still the saber. It only needed to use 40% of the speed. Then, when he walked, he couldn't just focus on agility. He had to keep his waist steady and rely on his waist to control the agility of his upper body. This way, the Meowdows using the waist to carry the saber, using the body to urge the saber to move, could be executed. Poplar Fruit pondered and tried, and Ian Liuqing began to feel Poplar Fruit's counterattack. It's getting faster. Ian Liuqing was slightly surprised. He also increased the speed of his saber. Now that he realized that Poplar Fruit's strength wasn't bad, he didn't need to hold back so much anymore. However, Poplar Fruit's progress was far faster than his. Poplar Fruit nimbly dodged. When Ian Liuqing thought that Poplar Fruit would appear on the right, Poplar Fruit magically jumped to the left. Poplar Fruit sucked in his chest, straightened his back, sucked in his stomach and tucked in his butt. He quickly raised his saber with great strength. Ian Liuqing was shocked. He didn't have time to dodge. Fortunately, his saber was very nimble and he was able to block in front of his left body. Dang! With a dull sound, Ian Liuqing felt a strong force coming from the saber. He couldn't block it at all. The saber was blocked. Ian Liuqing couldn't stop and kept retreating. In order to stabilize his body, he waved his left hand. At this time, he was wide open. Poplar Fruit wouldn't let go of any chance to defeat the enemy. He took another quick step forward and made a very simple downward slash. The Meowdow drew a crescent moon in the air and slashed towards Ian Liuqing's chest with a fierce saber wind. Ian Liuqing subconsciously closed his eyes. However, Poplar Fruit's saber suddenly stopped in front of him. He flicked his wrist and flipped the back of the saber. He gently touched Ian Liuqing's chest, meaning to stop. Ian Liuqing opened his eyes and stood up straight. He sighed and hugged his saber to Poplar Fruit. He had lost this match. There was applause all around. The children of Xiong village weren't stingy with their applause and cheers. It was as if they had won the match. The layman watched the show while the expert watched the skill. There was no one more expert than Xiong Kahu. He didn't applaud. Instead, he looked at Poplar Fruit strangely and pondered over Poplar Fruit's movements. This brat actually changed this old man's martial arts. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 634. Poplar Fruit was quite happy with his first victory. However, his happiness was mainly due to his innovation of the Meowdow. In a sense, this was also his own breakthrough. Perhaps Poplar Fruit did not notice Xiong Kahu's absent-mindedness. He did not know that even if he combined 2 martial arts, it was still a feat that ordinary people could not achieve. Moreover, Xiong Kahu had personally witnessed Poplar Fruit's transformation under the pressure of the battle in just a few minutes. A grandmaster of a generation. Xiong Kahu's face revealed a smile. It was hard to tell whether it was relief or bitterness. This kid, Meng Sonhua, who was standing at the side, seemed to have vaguely heard something. He asked doubtfully, "What? Old man, what did you say?" "Nothing." Xiong Kahu smiled and did not say much. Yin Luqing shook his head. He was not too depressed because of his failure. The strength that Poplar Fruit had just shown was not stronger than his actual strength. It was normal for him to be caught off guard by Poplar Fruit's transformation. As a martial artist, he had to be able to take things and let them go with the flow. Poplar Fruit and Yin Luqing still had the next match. Poplar Fruit saw Yin Luqing walk to the guitar case that he had placed at the side. He unzipped it and lifted the top half of the cover. Poplar Fruit suddenly realized that this guitar case was used to store his padao. Poplar Fruit smiled. At first, he was very confused as to why Yin Luqing would come to the mountain with a guitar. Seeing Poplar Fruit's curious gaze, Yin Luqing smiled and explained, "If a padao is not decorated when going out, it will cause uneasiness in public." Yin Luqing took out a metal handle that was about the length of the blade. It looked a bit like the handle of a short mop. He gently removed the plastic cover at the bottom of the handle, revealing a dark hole. He buckled the metal handle inside and rotated it twice. A long blade that looked like a large glaive was born under Poplar Fruit's surprised gaze. The surrounding children were also discussing. Their attention immediately shifted from Kiki's father's martial arts to the large blade that could transform. Xiong Kahu nodded with satisfaction. He said, "Descendant of the Yin family, today you will show me the glory of the #1 blade in North China." Yin Luqing quickly bowed and said, "Old man, I can't. I'm not as talented as my great-grandfather. How can I reproduce his glory?" "Hey, child, why do you talk so much?" Xiong Kahu was dissatisfied again. "If you're Yin Zhentai's descendant, then you should show some vigor. If you don't dare to take responsibility, how can you be a hero?" After that, he scolded Poplar Fruit. "Poplar Fruit. Used to use 2 blades too. You want to use a saber to fight the padao? In any case, you were taught by me. If you weaken my prestige, I won't let you off." From what he said, it seemed that Poplar Fruit was the disciple he was most dissatisfied with. It seemed that he didn't even want to acknowledge him as his disciple. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. He hurried over and asked Meng Sonhua to give him the other Miaodao. Meng Sonhua handed it over, but his eyes were fixed on Poplar Fruit's left hand. He found that the heavy Miaodao in Poplar Fruit's hand was as light as a leaf of reed. Meng Sonhua twirled the 2 blades in his left and right hands in a relaxed and natural manner. Meng Sonhua's eyes widened. He was beginning to wonder if he had been mistaken. Starting over, Poplar Fruit could feel that Yin Luqing was more domineering than before. It was a bit like the generals who led the charge on the battlefield in ancient times. It was as if they were going to tear the world apart. Now that the saber had grown longer, it was indeed different. However, Yang Gua had also changed a little. Equipped with 2 Miaodao, Yang Gua gave people a feeling that he was somewhat unpredictable. The 2 Miaodao were held together on the left and right side of each other. The light in his eyes was restrained, but they were as agile as an eagle's eyes, making people feel that he was a little mysterious. In the first 2 or 3 minutes, the 2 were still testing each other. In fact, it was the same as the previous round. They each followed their own steps. Poplar Fruit was not as erratic as before. The only difference was that their weapons had changed. Yin Luqing's blade was longer. The longer it was, the stronger it was, and the shorter it was, the more dangerous it was. The longer the blade, the stronger it was. Poplar Fruit could clearly feel how difficult it was for him to reach Yin Luqing. Yin Luqing's feeling was not so obvious. Poplar Fruit was only parrying. He did not take the initiative to attack. He did not feel the difference between 1 blade and 2 blades. However, Yin Luqing realized that his judgment was wrong. Poplar Fruit's dual blades were not as bad as he thought. On the contrary, Poplar Fruit's dual blades were not sluggish at all. It was as if his left and right hands were very agile. "There's nothing to see." Yin Luqing lost. Xiong Kahu shook his head dispiritedly. He was a grandmaster in using blades. He could see through the situation at a glance. The usage of padao, long blade, and short blade were different. After all, the ancients once said, a single blade depends on the hand, a double blade depends on the movement, and a large blade depends on the hand. The hand refers to the position of the blade's grip. Some blades had about 20 centimeters of copper on the hilt and plate. This piece was called the hand. Usually, when chopping, one hand would hold the hilt and the other hand would grasp the hilt. Only by exerting force from the waist could the long blade's vigorous strength be exerted. However, the basic routine of the padao was the same for the long and short blades. It was not as big as the changes between the two miaodao and the single miaodao. At present, from Yin Liuqing's performance, it was difficult to have a greater breakthrough in power. At this time, Poplar Fruit had not started to show his power. Just as Xiong Kahu thought, after Poplar Fruit observed clearly, he began to use the unpredictable 24 styles of the two miaodao. This time, he did not use the 8 meteor steps because it was no longer necessary. Poplar Fruit's figure suddenly became strange. Although it was not as fleeting as the 8 meteor steps, it was twisting left and right, swaying rapidly. The two miaodao attacked one direction, giving people the feeling that he was dealing with two equally powerful assassins at the same time. To be honest, old man Xiong Kahu could also do this when he was at his peak, but it was definitely not as easy as Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was someone who could multitask. To paraphrase a phrase from Mr. Jin's martial arts novels, Poplar Fruit could fight left and right. The two miaodao seemed to be tailor-made for him. In his hands, it was as if they had become two spiritual snakes with self-consciousness. It was still the same few stabs, flicks, flips, and slices, but the style became mysterious and unpredictable. Yin Liuqing was forced to use both the blade and the hilt. She also broke out stronger combat power beyond her limit to block Poplar Fruit's first 4 blades. In less than 2 seconds, Yin Liuqing's forehead was sweating profusely because she was too focused and nervous. However, this was only the beginning of Poplar Fruit. With Poplar Fruit's long breath and abundant physical strength, the next wave of storm-like attacks was coming. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 635. The competition ended amidst the children's exclamations. Apart from Yin Liuqing, who felt a little disappointed, the others naturally accepted the result, including Meng Sanhua. He was finally convinced. This guy is a monster. No wonder I can't beat him. Meng Sanhua snatched Poplar Fruit's miaodao and complained to his comrades, "Look at this miaodao. He can even play with it. Don't you think he's a monster?" Yin Liuqing also tried it. Her face changed when she held it in her hand. Bear 1, Bear 2, and Bear 3, who were as strong as bulls, weighed the miaodao in their hands and said, "Really? I think this miaodao is just right for me. Liuqing's miaodao is as light as a feather, just like a woman's." Haha. Poplar Fruit scratched his head. Under the praise of his brothers, he didn't get carried away. Xiong Kahu didn't ask Poplar Fruit about the changes he made to the miaodao footwork. After the competition, he calmly told the children to go home and study. Then, he went to the ancestral hall to inspect it with his hands behind his back. It wasn't that he wasn't curious, nor that he had nothing to say to Poplar Fruit. It was just that Xiong Kahu suddenly realized the gap between him and Poplar Fruit. He should have realized it when he was teaching Poplar Fruit how to use the miaodao. Xiong Kahu himself was a grandmaster and a gifted martial arts genius. But compared to Poplar Fruit, he was far from being a grandmaster. Xiong Kahu became famous in his teens. Then, he wandered in the martial arts world for more than 10 years. It wasn't until he joined the army and experienced a storm of bullets that he came back that he reached the level of a grandmaster. It could be said that it wasn't easy to achieve good results. But what about Poplar Fruit? He had only learned miaodao for less than half a month, and he was already able to compete with him. Although he was old and his skills were not as good as they were in the past, to be able to defeat Xiong Kahu, Poplar Fruit had already touched the threshold of a miaodao grandmaster. This was only half a month of hard work. Xiong Kahu believed that in less than a year, Poplar Fruit would surpass him at his peak. What made Xiong Kahu feel even more inferior to Poplar Fruit was Poplar Fruit's ability to innovate. Poplar Fruit had taught Kiki that children's boxing skills were not worth mentioning. That was, at most, a taiji fist at the level of a public square dance. However, Poplar Fruit had actually changed the Meowdao's footwork during the battle, and even made the one-handed Meowdao have decent combat power. This was a place that Xiong Kahu could never reach. Xiong Kahu had spent all his energy and summed up his experience of assassination on the battlefield before he could successfully optimize the bear-style Meowdao into its current strange, ever-changing, and elusive style. It could be said that this was a kung fu suitable for assassins in the night. Poplar Fruit's speed of innovation was a huge blow to Xiong Kahu, and it also made him understand that geniuses could not be judged by common sense. Perhaps this was the case. If Poplar Fruit was allowed to develop freely, he would have a more brilliant future. Grandmaster was never the limit of geniuses like him. If he were 20 years younger, Xiong Kahu would also be very interested in learning the changes that Poplar Fruit had just made. He might not accept all of them, but he would definitely benefit a lot. However, he was already in his 70s. Although his body was still healthy, he no longer had the ambition that he had when he was young. If he were to rashly learn a new kung fu, he might mess himself up. Xiong Kahu also maintained a high level of confidence in his two-handed Meowdao. Therefore, he simply did not want to ask, and simply guarded his achievements for the rest of his life. The world now belonged to the young people. The holidays of the Special Forces were not long. When Wanjua and Poplar Fruit walked back, he told him, "Poplar Fruit, we're going back tomorrow." "So soon? You're not going to stay here for a few more days?" Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. At the very most, his big brother and the others had not stayed in the Hmong village for more than 3 days. "Just a few days off. There are still things to do when we go back. However, it's been a long time since I stayed in a mountainous area so far away from the city. These few days can be considered as a vacation for me." Wanjua laughed. "Xiong San and the others are very happy." Poplar Fruit pointed at Xiong San and the others who were playing with a group of naughty kids behind them and laughed. "I didn't expect the kids to not be afraid of them." Wanjua shook his head and said, "Xiong San is gentle and has a natural attraction to kids. My Xiao Chen is also like that. He likes to play with him the most." In the afternoon, Poplar Fruit asked Xiong Jisher to gather the children in the Xiong village. Although the ancestral hall was not big enough to satisfy all the children, many of them still gathered together. "Now we'll test 60 computers. Next time we'll try a few more," Kai Si-min said to Poplar Fruit with sweat all over his forehead. Then he turned around and hurriedly ran to a child and shouted, "Hey, wait a minute. You can't press it like that." There were too many children. At least 3 children were sitting in front of each computer. Some of them did not have stools and were standing. Fortunately, Xiong Jiwu was maintaining order with Xiong Jisher and a few other men from the Hmong village, so it would not cause too much chaos. Poplar Fruit nodded. He saw Xiong Jiwu's affinity among the children from this incident. Generally, when Xiong Jiwu gently exhorted them, the children would obediently sit there with their hands behind their backs, unlike Kai Si-min who made a fuss. After a while, Kai Si-min found that the children knew nothing about how to use the computer. He simply put the keyboard, which was also the main computer, into the desk drawer to prevent any naughty children from accidentally touching it. Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment. He felt that before the next test, it was necessary to prepare a basic lesson for the children on how to use the computer. After everything was ready, Poplar Fruit walked back to Xiong Jiwu's house, which was more than 200 meters away from the ancestral hall. He went up to his room, turned on the computer, and clicked on the courseware that he had prepared. This time, it was the PowerPoint that Poplar Fruit had prepared yesterday. He wanted to try to simulate the classroom effect of the future long-distance education, so he chose a language lesson for the 3rd grade of primary school as the content of the lesson. After Fat Dragon confirmed with Kai Si-min that everything was ready, Poplar Fruit began to teach the children. The process did not need to be described too much. Poplar Fruit had spent a lot of effort for this lesson. Not only did he quote the classics, but he also thought of a lot of interactive links to stimulate the atmosphere of the classroom. Of course, there were also questions in the classroom. The children who were active and answered the questions well had the opportunity to go down the mountain to the city to broaden their horizons. After that, Poplar Fruit returned to the ancestral hall to summarize the problems found in the middle with Kai Si Min and the others. This time, with the help of the computer, the children could check Poplar Fruit's courseware on the computer, and they could also see the projection of Poplar Fruit's figure on the screen. Because it was the first time, there were some adjustments that needed to be made. For example, Poplar Fruit actually walked out of the camera while talking, and the interactive software designed by Fat Dragon still had a lot of flaws. These needed to be constantly summarized and optimized. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to. Chapter 636. At night, Hee-Wonjwa guessed that Kiki had fallen asleep, so he came to find Poplar Fruit to chat. "Do you know why I rarely talk to you?" Hee-Wonjwa asked with a smile as the two of them lay on the stone platform of the martial arts arena, looking up at the quiet and bright galaxy. "Why?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "Because you don't drink." Hee-Wonjwa chuckled and said, "Usually it's okay, but when you see a bottle of wine, you become shy like a girl." "Not happy." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "It's not that I don't drink, it's that I quit drinking. Drinking is not a good thing." Since they were talking about it, Poplar Fruit talked about the reason why he quit drinking. Of course, the reason was because of Kiki. "You little brat, you have a child at such a young age." Hee-Wonjwa's attention shifted to Kiki. He shook his head and said, "You haven't even experienced the wind, flower, snow, and moon, and you've already said goodbye to the wind. Your big brother admires you for being able to take responsibility, but I also feel sorry for you." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "That's not it. If it weren't for Kiki, I wouldn't have been able to travel among the flowers. Let me think, if Kiki didn't appear, if that accident didn't happen, I would have honestly done my foreign trade work, saved enough money, and married my girlfriend." Ex-girlfriend, she was my high school classmate. Poplar Fruit explained, "Buy a house, get married, and have a baby. It's still the same ordinary life. Actually, I think that after having Kiki, my life has become more exciting." Poplar Fruit looked up at the sky, but his eyes were unfocused. In his mind, Kiki's frown and smile appeared. He murmured, "I like the happiness my daughter brings me. Really, I can't imagine what my world would be like without Kiki. It's unimaginable." Hee-Wonjwa, who was also a father, nudged Poplar Fruit with his elbow and said with a smile, "Are you thinking of how she looked when she was just born?" Indeed, Poplar Fruit was recalling the time when Kiki was born. His memory was too good. Everything that happened more than a year ago seemed to be still vivid in his mind. When Kiki was just born, she was still wrinkled. When she slept at night, her little fist, the size of a rice spoon, tightly clenched his left index finger. The gentleness of blood still lingered in his heart. "Enough. Look at how sweet you are." Hee-Wonjwa couldn't stand Poplar Fruit's affectionate attitude. He pushed him with a smile and said, "You're making me want to have another daughter. I called you out because I want to ask you what you're up to with this long-distance education." Hee-Wonjwa asked curiously, "I saw more than 300 children this afternoon. You seem to have exceeded your expectations by making such a big fuss, right?" Hee-Wonjwa, after all, had someone in a high position in his family. He didn't just look at things from one perspective. From the overall situation, Poplar Fruit had indeed made a big fuss by designing software and researching curriculum for a primary school in the mountains with more than 300 children. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "At first, I did want to do something good for the children in the village. Later, I thought that if I could do this model well, maybe it could be popularized and change the current education system. I don't dare to say, but there are so many children in the world who can't afford to go to school. I want them to finish primary school through long-distance education, or even middle school and high school." Hee-Wonjwa was shocked by Poplar Fruit's whimsical idea. He was still thinking. Poplar Fruit talked about his own experience as if he was recalling something. "You don't know how hard life was for the Xiong family when I first met them." Poplar Fruit told Hee-Wonjwa a series of stories about how he encountered Xiong Jiwu's robbery and then learned that Xiong Xiaolin wanted to give up school to save her mother. If Poplar Fruit hadn't intervened, the Xiong family in the deep mountains would have been isolated by society. There would be no teachers to teach the children, and the children wouldn't know what the outside world was like. Without education, they can only stay in this valley forever. Poplar Fruit said, if they can have a little education, even if they can't get into college, they will have a chance to succeed in the outside world. Only when they go out, will they have a chance to come back and change the poor appearance of their hometown. I want more children to be able to read and have the ability to let themselves and the people in their hometown live a good life. Your ambition is, very great and also very great. Wanjua nodded and said, in fact, the Xiong family is not bad. It's in the southwest border area and the northwest. I've been there before when I was on a mission. Many villages are also very poor. They can't even find food and clothing at home, let alone go to school. Wanjua asked, there are also a few comrades. I heard them say that their hometown is very poor. Some parents have an accident while working outside. Only the grandma in her 70s or 80s takes care of the children. They rely on the relief fund and the family to feed their children. The government came to persuade the children to go to school, saying that the school fees are waived by the country and the village can subsidize some tuition and miscellaneous expenses. Guess what the children said? Poplar Fruit guessed. They refused? Well, the girl was only 8 years old and was very sensible. She said that if I went to school, there would be no one to wash the clothes and cook for her grandma at home. She would be worried. She refused to go no matter what. Wanjua sighed and said, our country has never lacked these things. There are tragic situations everywhere. As they spoke, the two of them sat cross-legged. I know that you've made a lot of money from selling games recently. Wanjua finally said what he wanted to say. It's not wrong to say that Dada helps the world. But have you thought about it? You've invested more than 1 million yuan, and it's only for 300 people. There are so many poor children in the country. Can you help them all? Wanjua was concerned about Poplar Fruit. He knew that his younger brother was a scholar and was not cut out for business. He had not bought a house in Yongcheng. It was not easy for him to earn such a large sum of money, but he wanted to spend it on charity. He wanted to persuade Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was stunned. Big Brother He's question reminded him of the question he asked Fong Bei in the past. It was very similar. There are so many stray dogs in the world. Can you save all of them? Fong Bei's answer was, I can't save all of them. But if I save one, there will be a stray dog that doesn't have to live on the streets. It will have a warm nest that belongs to it. Poplar Fruit smiled brightly. He said firmly, I know I can't help everyone, but I will do my best. Wanjua was stunned for a long time. He did not try to persuade him again. He patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, reform and good things are not easy. You have to be careful with your words and actions. It's still the same old saying. If there's any problem, come and find me. My dad is in Guangdong province, so he has some say here. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 637. Early the next morning, Poplar Fruit drove his brothers back to Yongcheng. Wanjua and the others arrived at the county station and refused to let Poplar Fruit send them back. It's okay, it's only a 3-hour drive to the airport in the city. Poplar Fruit argued. Okay. Hurry up and go back. Wanjua waved his hand and said with a smile, I know you have other tasks today. Poplar Fruit, aren't you about to start school? Why don't you go back with us? Xiong-san asked in a muffled voice. I still have to go back in 2 days. I have to explain the things here clearly. Poplar Fruit explained. There was no reluctance. The soldiers were very straightforward. They left as soon as they said they were going. They waved their hands and did not look back. They carried their bags and got on the county bus. After sending off Wanjua and the others, Poplar Fruit drove back to Xiong village without stopping. On the way, Kiki, who was in the passenger seat, asked curiously, Papa, are we going home? Yes, I'll take you back the day after tomorrow. Don't you miss home and sister Bebe? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Kiki's answer was a little hesitant. She said, I miss. Kiki also misses sister Bebe. Kiki also misses Grandma Lou and Uncle Mosquito. But, when we go home, will we not be able to see Sister Xiaolin and Little Feng Gu? Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment. He did not directly answer Kiki's question. He said, after we go home, your Sister Xiaolin and Little Feng Gu also have to go to school. They can't play with you like they did during this period of time. However, I'll give them lessons. When it's the holidays, I'll take you here to play with them, okay? Poplar Fruit was secretly changing the logic. Kiki did not hear anything wrong for the time being, so she nodded in confusion. Then, she chattered with her father about the adventure in the mountains that a little brother told them yesterday. Before they reached the foot of the mountain, the sharp-eyed Kiki cried out in surprise, Papa, Papa! Kiki saw brother Anshuan. She shouted while trying to break free from the restraint of the baby safety belt. Poplar Fruit amusedly pressed his overly energetic daughter down on the seat and said with a smile, What's the hurry? Isn't I going to pick them up now? It was really a coincidence. Poplar Fruit had actually arranged for Xiong Jisher to take the two children to play in the county town first. Then, Poplar Fruit would send Big Brother He and the others back, and then go to find them on the way. Unexpectedly, it did not take long for Poplar Fruit to send them off. When he rushed back, he happened to see Xiong Jisher and the two children waiting for the bus at the foot of the mountain. It seemed that they had been waiting for a long time. It was said that the bus in the county town would only come once every 2 hours, and the time was not fixed. It was very difficult for the Miao people in the mountains to go to the county town without Poplar Fruit's Land Rover. Jisher, I'm back. Tell the children to get in the car. Poplar Fruit laughed as he stuck his head out of the car window and greeted them. Great. Xiong Anshuan was the most lively. He left Xiong Jisher and his other little friend and ran over excitedly. However, he did not know how to open the door, so he could only wait for Xiong Jisher to come over and open the door for him. Uncle Poplar Fruit, nice to meet you. Xiong Anshuan climbed into the back seat and excitedly started to talk to Kiki. On the other hand, the other girl, who was about 10 years old, politely greeted Poplar Fruit. Hello, Aunt May. Poplar Fruit also responded with a smile. Aunt May, do you see the black bag in the back seat? Uncle just bought some soy milk in the county town. Can you share it with Brother Anshuan and Uncle Jisher? Okay. Xiong Aunt May nodded obediently. She shared the soy milk and asked Poplar Fruit, Uncle, do you and Kiki want some? No need. Before Poplar Fruit could finish, Kiki shouted, Sister Xiao Mei, I want some. Kiki wants to drink soy milk. Poplar Fruit reached out to stop Xiong Aunt May from handing Kiki the soy milk. He smiled and took out Kiki's milk bottle from the armrest box. He said reproachfully, Kiki wants everything. Aunt May, don't pay attention to her. Kiki, you haven't finished drinking yours. Kiki held the milk bottle and muttered, But Kiki wants that. Poplar Fruit explained, Why? Don't they all taste the same? You don't know how to use a straw, so Dad poured the soy milk into your milk bottle. Have you forgotten? It was not easy to take care of children, especially when there was a restless person like Xiong Anshuan. It was difficult for Xiong Jisher to deal with him. Poplar Fruit had to intervene several times to calm down the car. It could also be seen that Xiong Jisher's kung fu was good, but his ability to discipline children was far inferior to Xiong Jiwu's. Back in the county town, Poplar Fruit did not plan to buy beautiful new clothes for the two children this time. It was not that he did not have money, but he suddenly felt that if he bought new clothes for them, it would inevitably cause a competition when they went back. Especially Xiong Anshuan. Although he was very smart, he liked to show off more. If the children quarreled or fought because of the clothes, Poplar Fruit did not want that to happen. After shopping for a while, Poplar Fruit took them to the sports store. In fact, this was his main destination today. Yesterday, when he was sparring with Yin Lu Qing, there were so many children surrounding them. After that, it was unknown if they were inspired by them, but many children ran to the martial arts practice field and started to throw themselves around. When Poplar Fruit saw this scene, he felt uncomfortable in his heart. He always felt that something was missing. Later in the evening, Poplar Fruit finally figured it out. It turned out that the children on the mountain lacked the most basic sports measures. Not to mention basketball stands and basketballs, even the most simple table tennis was not available. Nowadays, people were talking about the all-round development of moral, intellectual, physical, aesthetic, and labor. Classes were only to cultivate children's wisdom, but sports, which could make children develop in a balanced way, were not available. Poplar Fruit felt that there was still a big flaw in the long-distance education he did. So today, Poplar Fruit took the children to choose sports equipment and planned to buy them together. When Xiong Anshuan and the others entered the sports store, it was as if they had entered the Grand View Garden. Everything was strange and new, especially Xiong Anshuan. He was so curious that he wanted to touch everything. "I know this." Kiki ran over and wanted to pick up a basketball, but the basketball was a little too big for her. She could not pick it up. "My papa is good at basketball. I also want to learn." Xiong Anshuan looked at Kiki enviously and said. Xiong Anmei was also very excited. She ran to the colorful skipping rope, pointed at the Poplar Fruit and said, "Uncle, I have also seen this. I heard from Teacher Meng that the big brothers and sisters in the city have to take the skipping rope test in junior high school. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to." Chapter 638. To be honest, in a small county like Lidong, there was no need to ask for a customer-first service experience. After Poplar Fruit and the others entered the sports store, no salesperson came up to talk to them. The boss and his wife sat behind the counter, laughing and talking about the recent events in the county. Poplar Fruit pricked up his ears to listen. Of course, they were talking about the recent earthquake in the officialdom. This big change not only affected the officialdom, but also affected the lives of many ordinary people in the county. Of course, it became a topic of conversation after dinner. The service experience was bad, but at least they didn't see Xiong Anshuan and the others in ragged clothes. The boss was kind, and inadvertently kept a big customer. "I want 7 basketballs, 5 footballs, 10 pairs of table tennis rackets, and 20 pairs of table tennis. For badminton, I want 7 pairs of rackets, and 10 shuttlecocks." Poplar Fruit turned around and pointed out, "And some skipping ropes. I want something more durable." "Boss, don't cheat me. If the quality is good this time, I'll buy from you again next time." The boss looked at Poplar Fruit, stunned, and asked, "Little brother, are you going to open a store after buying it?" "No, I'm buying it for the children to play with." Poplar Fruit smiled and patted Xiong Anshuan's head. After confirming that Yang Gua was purely doing a good deed, the boss's face was full of admiration. He patted his chest and said, "Little brother, I've been running this shop for more than 10 years, and I've never seen a kind-hearted person like you. Don't worry, I'll definitely give you the best quality and the best price." Poplar Fruit saw the boss's wife's hesitant expression. He smiled and said, "Boss, I think your price is quite reasonable. Even if you give me a discount, I don't think you'll make much money. Let's just follow the price in your store. You just have to help me pick out the best goods." Hearing Poplar Fruit's words, the lady boss behind the boss also smiled and said, "Little brother, don't worry. Our old Wang is an honest person. He definitely won't cheat you on the quality." The reason why the lady boss was so happy was mainly because Li Dong had bought a lot of Poplar Fruit this time. The total turnover was close to 8,000 yuan. In a small town like Li Dong, it was equivalent to almost a month of their hard work. "That's right. If you find that the quality is not good, feel free to bring it back. We will replace it within 30 days. And that badminton racket, if the thread is broken, feel free to bring it back. We will replace the thread for you. We won't charge you." The boss laughed. The boss later promised that he would deliver the goods to Poplar Fruit, which made Poplar Fruit breathe a sigh of relief. Although Poplar Fruit's Land Rover was very big, it was still insufficient to stuff so much sports equipment into it. And Shun and Mei what do you want to eat? Poplar Fruit asked. After shopping at the sports equipment store, it was almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They hadn't had lunch yet. Xiong Anshuan rushed to answer, I want to eat Mackenzie's. Xiong An Mei also licked her lips and nodded. Mackenzie's was a fast food restaurant in a small town like Lidong that imitated McDonald's and KFC in the United States. The food it sold was exactly the same as the other two, burgers, fries, and fried chicken. Poplar Fruit had seen restaurants similar to Mackenzie's before. There were quite a few in his hometown as well. However, after McDonald's and KFC opened their stores, the copycat restaurants gradually closed down. Everyone went for the authentic Western fast food. Actually, the taste was not too different. It was just that almost everyone felt that a foreign monk was better at chanting scriptures. Previously, Poplar Fruit had asked Xiong Jisher to bring the two children shopping. Xiong Jisher had brought them to eat Mackenzie's. The food was completely different from Chinese food. It was novel and delicious. After they went back, the children in Xiong village talked about it. This was something that Poplar Fruit had not expected. The children had praised Mackenzie's as the most delicious food in the city. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. He didn't try to correct their thoughts. In fact, it didn't matter what they ate. The result was to guide the children to maintain their desire for the outside world. Wasn't it all the same? However, Poplar Fruit wasn't willing to let Kiki eat unhealthy food like fried chicken. Kiki was too young. Her body wasn't immune to calories and unhealthy elements like older children. Poplar Fruit ordered mashed potatoes and vegetable salad for Kiki and fed her. At first, Kiki didn't want to. She also wanted to eat when she saw her brothers and sisters eating happily. However, she was stopped by her father. At this time, Xiong Anshuan was restless again. He waved a fragrant New Orleans roast chicken leg and tempted Kiki with a smile. Kiki, look, I have a chicken leg to eat. He also turned his head and made an intoxicated expression. Seeing this, Kiki pouted and pulled her father's sleeve. She felt wronged. Poplar Fruit had to comfort her. Next time, when we go home, Dad will cook for Kiki, okay? Dad's chicken is 100 times better than Brother Anshuan's. Yes, yes. Kiki, who trusted her father 100%, was very easy to fool. She nodded happily and proudly raised her chin to Xiong Anshuan. She said, Anshuan, Gij, my father's chicken leg is 100 times better than yours. Kiki won't share it with you. I don't want it. Mackenzie's is the best. Xiong Anshuan retorted unconvinced. Xiong Anshuan. Poplar Fruit patted his butt and scolded with a smile. Eat your food. If you make trouble again, I won't let you eat it. Poplar Fruit finally appeased Kiki. He couldn't let Xiong Anshuan tease Kiki again. After eating, Poplar Fruit took them to walk around the shopping mall. The big LCD TV, the dazzling array of beautiful clothes, almost every shop made Xiong Anshuan and Xiong An Mei unable to move their legs. Study hard. In the future, when you go into society, you will have the opportunity to earn more money and be able to buy these good things for yourself. Poplar Fruit patted them on the shoulder and said. Poplar Fruit wouldn't tell them that if they studied hard, they would be able to earn a lot of money in the future. But he would give them a dream, a goal to strive for. This time, when he took the children out of the county, it was much more peaceful. They didn't meet the BMW hooligan. Of course, when his father was arrested, Liang Huaxing, the #1 young master in the past, didn't have a good time. His family's car, house, and bank book were all sealed. He had no money and no followers. He was like a rat crossing the street. Liang Huaxing didn't dare to appear in this small county where he used to be a tyrant. Liang Huaxing hid in a relative's house in the city. However, his background wasn't clean. It was only a matter of time before the police caught him. Such a small character who was no longer a threat had no value in appearing again. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 639. For the next 2 days, Poplar Fruit traveled between the 3 Hmong villages non-stop. He paid special attention to the other 2 Hmong villages other than Xiong village to understand their children's situation. Actually, they didn't have any complaints about Poplar Fruit setting up a unified teaching center in Xiong village. In fact, they were looking forward to the effects of Poplar Fruit's long-distance education. The 2 Hmong villages weren't too far away from Xiong village. Even if the children walked slowly, it would take them at most an hour to walk. Moreover, the size of their villages added together wasn't as big as Xiong village. They felt lucky to be able to rely on Xiong village to provide education for their children. Although walking an hour to school was unimaginably difficult for people living in a big city, for children living in the mountains, it was actually nothing more than a common occurrence. However, a 2-hour round trip was too time-consuming. Poplar Fruit considered whether to set up a student hostel in Xiong village so that the children who came from afar could stay in Xiong village and go back on the weekends. However, no matter which Hmong village they were from, they lived a tight life. They would rather walk back and forth for 2 hours a day than spend more on food and accommodation. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to study this problem later. His idea was to let the children work hard this semester. During this process, Poplar Fruit would try his best to think of a way. He could either pay for the food and accommodation with his own money, or ask Meng Ping for help. It wasn't easy to ask Meng Ping for help. That guy was very stubborn. Without any results to back it up, Poplar Fruit felt that it would be very difficult to convince him. Take it slow. Everything was always difficult at the beginning. However, Poplar Fruit didn't feel at ease letting the children from the other 2 Hmong villages go to school and go home alone. After all, they were still primary school children. Under Poplar Fruit's insistence, although the 2 Hmong village leaders didn't take it seriously, they agreed to Poplar Fruit's request in the end. After school started, they would arrange for someone to pick up the children from their villages every day to ensure their safety on the road. As for the sports equipment they bought, Yanghua asked Uncle He to design and plan the basketball court, football field, and other venues according to the information on the internet. In the mountains, the requirements naturally could not be too high. The basketball court and the football court were expected to be designed together. The basketball court could be used to play basketball, and if it was extended out a little, it could also be used to play small-scale football. The table tennis court will use wooden planks to form a table, and you can play by pulling a line in the middle. As for the badminton court, it was even simpler. Just find an empty space and draw a line in the middle of it. Therefore, after these sports equipment were bought back, it caused a mad scramble among the children. Poplar Fruit bought a lot of equipment. Apart from giving 2 basketballs, a football, 2 pairs of table tennis rackets, and a pair of badminton rackets to the other 2 Hmong villages, the rest were left in Xiong village as teaching equipment. Naturally, the head teacher Xiong Jiwu was in charge of them. Time didn't allow Poplar Fruit to teach the children how to use all the equipment, so Poplar Fruit looked for Xiong Jisher for one-on-one guidance. He didn't teach much, mainly talking about the rules and methods of various sports. As for the rest, he let Xiong Jisher learn by watching videos and then teach it to the children. Of course, this was just a plan. Poplar Fruit's plan was to find a student from the sports department to give him long-distance guidance. However, the best way to guide sports was face-to-face education. Poplar Fruit didn't know if long-distance education was feasible, so he prepared for both sides. At night, he discussed with Fat Dragon and Kai Si Min, the 2 night owls, until late at night. As they had done 2 tests in the middle of the night, the results were getting better and better, but there were still many bugs that needed to be fixed. Fat Dragon, help me see if you can design a software, or we can design a website for the children to do their homework. Poplar Fruit said, "You still want to do online homework?" Fat Dragon asked doubtfully. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "But I don't want to just make a website for online homework." "What do you mean?" Fat Dragon was confused by Poplar Fruit's words. "What's the purpose of doing homework?" Poplar Fruit asked Fat Dragon. "The teacher wants to torture the students. He doesn't want them to go home to watch TV or play on the computer." Fat Dragon curled his lips. When he was a student, he hated homework. He often asked Poplar Fruit to copy his homework. Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes and said, "Don't talk nonsense. I'm talking about serious matters. Doing homework is nothing more than to let the children consolidate the content of the day's study. Poplar Fruit said, but if it's just doing homework, and if it's the same as before, to be honest, I don't think it's effective at all. What are you going to do? Fat Dragon stretched and said, just tell me your request, and I'll do it according to your request. Poplar Fruit took a piece of paper and said to Fat Dragon, I think this way. If there are 100 knowledge points in Book A, then I will create a question bank with 20 or 50 questions for each of these 100 knowledge points. The numbers I mentioned are just a concept. I'll ask Bei Bei to calculate later and tell you how much I need. This is just the basic. If it's upgraded, there will be a corresponding question bank. Poplar Fruit said, it's not just a question bank. For each question, there will be a corresponding detailed answer and analysis process. It's equivalent to putting the answer at the back. Then there's the logic of the software or website. Poplar Fruit paused for a moment and said, the teacher will tick the knowledge points he designed during the lecture, and then the software will randomly select the corresponding questions to make a test paper that will appear on the student's computer. It's a bit like how we do online questionnaires. One question is one page, but the difference is that if you don't successfully complete this question, you can't go on to the next step. Poplar Fruit shrugged and said, what if you do the wrong question? The system will show the correct answer and the analysis process, guiding the student step by step to think. Well, now that you've figured out how to solve this question, it's time to draw inferences. There's no need for 3 questions. As long as the student can complete 2 similar questions randomly selected by the system, he can go on to the next step. Poplar Fruit laughed. Pay attention here. The system needs to remember which knowledge point and which question type the student made a mistake in. I need it to be like the Ebbinghaus memory curve. I needed to arrange for the student to repeat these questions in the next few days to consolidate the memory. Poplar Fruit emphasized the repeated review process. We need the system to help the student learn, so we have to consider it more comprehensively. They need to review until they've confirmed that they've memorized it. Poplar Fruit said, of course, our system will also generate a set of wrong questions to record the types of questions he missed. Even if he memorized it in the past few days, he can find it in the system if he needs to review it for the final exam. Looking for monthly votes. Looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 640. In the evening, Meng Ping received a call. Usually, he would not call for no reason. His call was not for small talk, but to bring good news. The day after Meng Ping submitted his report, the acting county head approved his application. Then, the Power Supply Bureau and the Telecommunications Bureau did not drag their feet. They arranged for the construction team to be ready the day after tomorrow to help with the installation. Everything went smoothly. It was a sharp contrast to the previous difficult progress. Poplar Fruit and Meng Ping did not expect that it could be so smooth because of the aftermath of Liang Shengtao's fall. The Education Bureau was affected the most. But what surprised everyone was that Meng Ping did not retreat. He achieved 2 consecutive jumps in just 1 year. Now, even the acting county head felt that this guy's background was too big. So, when Meng Ping made his application, several leaders discussed it and tacitly approved it. They also instructed their subordinates to implement it seriously. No matter how wonderful this misunderstanding was, Poplar Fruit and the others did not know about it. Even if they knew, they would just laugh it off. Perhaps it was because of the stimulation of this good news. Even though it was already past 1 o'clock in the morning, Poplar Fruit's brain became more and more active. He thought while talking, no, it's not just for the existence of homework. Poplar Fruit clapped his hands and said excitedly, we want to provide an opportunity for self-growth for the children who have the energy to learn. You know, some children are special. They are smarter than the children around them. They don't need to learn step by step. If they are given a suitable track, they will become talents faster. Poplar Fruit said, but the problem is, we don't know which children belong to this special group. And we don't know where their limits are. Poplar Fruit laughed. Then let them discover it themselves. So, our software, Fat Dragon said, it's still a website. If it's a software, the capacity may be very large. If it's a website, it can be supported by the server outside. Alright, our website's topic design logic will be divided into 2 parts. Poplar Fruit stood up, walked back and forth, and said, part of it is the basics. It's not too difficult. The main purpose is to let the children consolidate the knowledge they have learned and learn to connect the knowledge points to solve the problem. The second part is the self-advancement part. Of course, this is optional. Children who have the ability, interest, or desire to improve themselves can choose to do it. Poplar Fruit said, let's take mathematics as an example. Choose questions that are easy to understand, and try to choose questions that stimulate their own thinking. What if he doesn't? Fat Dragon asked, I know you might have some Olympiad questions here, but you didn't teach them in class, so how could they know how to do it? Could it be that only super powerful geniuses are able to attempt your questions? Poplar Fruit nodded and said, you're right, I didn't think it through. Then let's do it this way. In the self-advancement part, before the start of each stage, the computer will arrange a teaching process for Xiao Duan. What kind of teaching? Fat Dragon asked. If it's like your usual classes, where the teacher is one-on-one, then it's another way to deal with it. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, without the teacher one-on-one, we can't make the volunteers wait there all the time. The current plan is to teach them in the form of textbooks. Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment and said, can you make the process of solving and analyzing the previous questions more colorful? Don't just have cold text. I think it might be better if you can insert some pictures, animations, and explanations in steps. That's not a problem. Fat Dragon smiled and said, in addition to your common PowerPoint slides abroad, there are also good courseware software such as Director, AutoWare, and so on. We can embed it in and realize your idea. Poplar Fruit smiled happily and said, that's great. In that way, we can make the teaching part of the personal advancement more interesting, so that the children can find the fun of learning when they're self-studying. This is not a small project, I think. Poplar Fruit frowned and said, can you handle it alone? Fat Dragon looked at Poplar Fruit bitterly and said, you finally care about me? Hey, who told me to hook up with a hands-off boss like you? Tomorrow, you and Kiki will go back, leaving me and the rookie alone in this mountain. Poplar Fruit patted Fat Dragon's shoulder and said, capable people have more work to do. You two have worked hard. I'm going to Bali next month. I told you before that when I come back, I'll bring you 2 bags, so that you won't have to kneel on the keyboard at home. I also want a belt. Prada. Fat Dragon said with his eyes shining. Haha, then I'll have to buy you an extra large one to wear. Poplar Fruit laughed. After laughing, Poplar Fruit said seriously, I know that you have a lot of things to do now. In addition to improving the interactive software for our classes, you also have to make the website I'm talking about now. I'm worried that you won't be able to handle it. And I want to make them even better. Poplar Fruit paused for a moment and didn't say what he was worried about. He asked, are you busy in the company now? Could you spare a few people to help out? You can set up a project team. I'll provide you with some funds, and the price will be according to the market price. It's the same as if your company accepted a single project. Fat Dragon didn't refuse. He was now the boss of a company. Although the company was relatively unorganized, he had to look at the problem from the perspective of others. Fat Dragon thought for a moment and said, most people have nothing to do at the moment. 2 people in Nanuet are making a small game, so they might not be able to spare some time. Everyone else can help. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, then you can help arrange this. How much money do you need? Give me a number. Fat Dragon thought for a moment and said, it won't be too much. You're doing a charity project, so we'll give you a discount. How about $10,000? So little? Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. It's just a website. Do you think it'll be expensive? Fat Dragon laughed. In fact, many companies in the country can do this job. We just do it better. Fat Dragon was very confident, but not blindly. Isn't there an interactive software? Poplar Fruit asked. That's just copying. There are too many similar software on the market. It's very simple, Fat Dragon laughed. Just treat it as a friendly sponsorship. Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment, then said, I can't let you guys lose too much. I'll give you 100,000 RMB, rounded up. Fat Dragon laughed. All right, you're the boss. You have the final say. All right, our team is only responsible for the programming. We're not good at the design. You'll have to ask Uncle Who. There are a lot of designers in your company who are better than us. If Fat Dragon didn't mention it, Poplar Fruit wouldn't even remember that he was a shareholder of Ludong. IMMT should be out soon. I wonder how the game will sell? Poplar Fruit was looking forward to it. Poplar Fruit didn't have much money left in his account, only a little over 1 million RMB. However, he wasn't worried because he was earning money at a decent rate. Plus, he was going to Bali next month. Based on Otto's generous personality, he would definitely give him a good reward. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 641. Wah. I don't want to go. At the entrance of the Xiong village, Kiki's cries resounded through the sky. The parting had finally come. Although Yang Guo had already told Chi-Chi a few days ago that she wanted her to be mentally prepared, Yang Guo still didn't know what to do. However, even a teenager didn't know what it was like to be worried, not to mention that Kiki was still an ignorant child. It wasn't until Poplar Fruit carried the luggage and said goodbye to the people of the Xiong village with one hand that Kiki started to panic. It wasn't like before when he went to the county for a stroll and then went back. This time, his father was serious. After leaving this time, she didn't know when she would come back. In Kiki's mind, it seemed that she was going to leave her friends forever. Xiong Xiaolin, who was virtuous and considerate, Xiong Xiaofeng, who was naughty but took care of her, Xiong Anxuan, who often bullied her but had a good heart, and many good friends who had been with her day and night for the past half-month. At the entrance of the village, Kiki struggled desperately in her father's arms. Usually, Poplar Fruit could forcibly hold her down, but today, Poplar Fruit was carrying 2 heavy Miao Dao on his back, and in his right hand was carrying a suitcase that ordinary people couldn't even lift with 2 hands. How could he hold Kiki with only his left hand? Hey, send her off. Xiong Kahu waved his hand impatiently and said. The old man wasn't really impatient. He also felt a lot of reluctance in his heart, but the old man was never willing to expose his weak side to others, so he could only express it with this kind of irritation. Xiong Jisha grabbed Poplar Fruit's suitcase and lifted it with another young and strong Miao brother in the village. Only then did Poplar Fruit free his hands to comfort his daughter. Thanks to Xiong Xiaolin, Xiong Xiaofeng, and a few other companions following closely behind, Kiki's mood eased a little. However, this only alleviated a little. She was still sobbing with tears in her eyes, looking at her friends pitifully, causing Xiong Xiaofeng and the others to also cry. Even big sister Xiong Xiaolin, who was the oldest and most sensible, had red eyes, tears rolling in her eyes. Idiot! Poplar Fruit stroked her daughter's soft hair lovingly, rubbed her daughter's tears with her face, and said softly, It's not like you'll never see Sister Xiaolin and Brother Xiaofeng again. When you get home, you can video call them often. Even if Sister Xiaolin goes to school in the county, she'll still be able to see you when she comes back. Poplar Fruit signaled Xiong Xiaolin with his eyes. Even though she was reluctant, Xiong Xiaolin was still a sensible big sister. She came up with a hoarse voice, took Kiki's little hand, and said, Kiki, don't worry, Big Sister will definitely go home to see you when she has the chance. But I want to play with Big Sister. Kiki pouted her little mouth, and tears began to roll in her eyes again. We'll come back. Poplar Fruit quickly patted her daughter's back and said, When Dad comes back from Bali, I'll definitely bring you back to see you when I have time. Besides, even if Dad doesn't have time to come back this semester, Dad will definitely come back during the winter vacation. I want to play with Big Sister. Kiki shook her head desperately, and then burst into tears again, leaving Poplar Fruit at a loss of what to do. In fact, Poplar Fruit had been a father for almost a year and a half. He knew that at this time, no matter what he said, Kiki would not listen. It was like when your girlfriend lost her temper, you would never be able to distinguish and reason with her. It was useless. In the face of Kiki's current situation of struggling and not wanting to leave, the only thing Poplar Fruit could do was to take Kiki back by force and let her cry until she was tired and go to sleep. After sleeping, she would be fine when she woke up. Poplar Fruit also understood the reason, but which parent would be willing to let their child cry? Yonghua was even more unbearable. He couldn't bear to see a woman's tears the most. He couldn't bear to see Chi-Chi's tears even more, especially when the little fellow was crying her heart out and hugging his neck tightly. Yonghua's heart felt as stifled as the capital's East 2nd Ring Road. Originally, when Xiong Jiwu, Xiong Jisher, and the others sent Poplar Fruit down, they were full of gratitude and wanted to say something to Poplar Fruit. In the end, Poplar Fruit only cared about comforting his daughter, so they did not even have a chance to interrupt. Finally, at the foot of the mountain, when the things were moved to the back of the Land Rover, Xiong Jiwu had a chance to talk to Poplar Fruit. At this time, he did not know what to say. What to say? He had a lot to say. He thanked Poplar Fruit for his tolerance, thanked Poplar Fruit for his generous help, and thanked Poplar Fruit for bringing changes to him and his family. The previous ones did not need to be said too much. Take the class teacher as an example. Maybe Xiong Jiwu had not really started to become a class teacher, or maybe he still had a lot to learn from Poplar Fruit and Fat Dragon, but he understood that Poplar Fruit not only provided him with a job opportunity, but also gave him a way to realize the value of life. Xiong Jiwu limped over and hugged Poplar Fruit's hand. He opened his mouth several times, but no words came out. He really did not know what to say. In the end, thousands of words were gathered into one sentence. Poplar Fruit, thank you. Really, thank you. Poplar Fruit smiled and did not say anything. He just patted Xiong Jiwu's shoulder, as if their ages were reversed. Poplar Fruit used a little strength to tell Xiong Jiwu to work hard. Because Fat Dragon and Kai Si Mean were lazy, they only sent them to the gate of the village and did not go down the mountain. Therefore, at the foot of the mountain, except for the elders sent by the other two Hmong village as representatives, the rest were all people from the Xiong village. Xiong Kahu actually wanted to thank Poplar Fruit. He thanked Poplar Fruit from the bottom of his heart for bringing changes to the Xiong village. But the old man could not say it out loud. He stayed at the back for a while, then suddenly pushed the crowd away and walked to the front. Okay. Why are you dawdling? Do you want to stay until it's dark? Old Master Xiong Kahu looked impatient, but everyone knew that he was just being stubborn. He waved his hand as if he was annoyed by Poplar Fruit and said, Go. It took 2 hours to go down the mountain. If we go now, we can still have lunch in the county. Yonghua smiled. He actually quite liked his master's straightforward personality. He hugged Chi-Chi and couldn't clasp his hands together. He could only nod and say, All right, then I'll be going. Master, take care of yourself. Don't be angry all the time. Take care of your health. Don't be long-winded. As a hero, you have to be decisive. How can you be sentimental? Xiong Kahu reprimanded him. Since you called me master, I have to take responsibility. If you don't practice your Miao Dao diligently when you go back, I'll kill you the next time you come. Old Master Lin's meddling actually lessened the sadness of parting slightly. Of course, Kiki was not affected at all. She was still immersed in her reluctance to leave, crying and throwing a tantrum. Even if her father trapped her firmly in the seat, she kept struggling. I'm leaving. I'll be back. Poplar Fruit waved to everyone and got into the driver's seat with a smile. The Land Rover made a beautiful drift and disappeared at the end of the mountain. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 642. Don't cry, okay? Poplar Fruit slowed down the car. He used his right hand to wipe off a large pearl that had accidentally popped out on his daughter's face. His eyes were still looking forward. He only occasionally glanced at his daughter from the rear-view mirror. He smiled and said, You're so noisy that the other uncles and aunties almost think your father is a big bad guy. Yesterday, Kiki was the most noisy. She cried for the whole day. Poplar Fruit got out of the car to refuel or go to the hotel to buy food. He held Kiki in his arms. The passers-by's attention were attracted by Kiki's crying. They looked at Kiki struggling in Poplar Fruit's arms and wondered if this guy was a human trafficker. Fortunately, there was a cute golden retriever at Poplar Fruit's feet. Moreover, Poplar Fruit also had the aura and appearance of a father who loved his daughter. Otherwise, people would have called the police. However, even so, Kiki still brought a lot of trouble to Poplar Fruit. The staff questioned him with doubts. Even at the hotel at night, the staff asked him a lot of questions. He didn't know if they were deliberately hitting on him. Poplar Fruit didn't think so. Now, the little girl finally stopped crying. Although she would occasionally drop a few drops of golden beans, it was much better than yesterday, wasn't it? Poplar Fruit drove for a while and looked at his daughter again. Kiki didn't pay attention to her father. She was still sulking. The little girl pouted her pink little mouth and turned her head to look at the car window. She didn't know what was so beautiful about the green forest outside the car window. In any case, Chi-Chi just looked like she was very angry. If the little girl was a dozen years older, she would wear a light pink ancient costume and let out 2 soft sighs. She would definitely look like Lin Luoran. What did the book say? 2 curved eyebrows that seemed to be frowning, a pair of eyes that seemed to be happy but not happy. 2 dimples appear in a state of worry, and a body of illness attack. Little tears, little panting. Quiet like a beautiful flower shining on the water, moving like a weak willow swaying in the wind. He was referring to Kiki's pitiful appearance at this moment. Although the little fellow was in good health, she was too tired from crying yesterday. Today, when she sat in the car, there was a kind of tiredness and melancholy lingering on her brows, which added a bit of tenderness to her. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but laugh as he drove. Kiki couldn't pretend any more. After all, she was still young. She was at odds with her father. She wanted to make a silent protest by ignoring him, but the other one didn't buy it. Kiki was impatient. She turned her face and looked at her father with resentment. She pouted and tears rolled in her eyes again. She said aggrievedly, "Papa, you're bad." The voice was not loud, but it was very powerful, expressing the master's terrible mood. Poplar Fruit raised his right hand and surrendered without principle. "Well, I've said it many times. I was wrong, but I promise, when I have time in the future, I will take you back to see your little sisters and brothers, okay?" But... Kiki said with a pause. Poplar Fruit didn't let her continue. Kiki's thoughts were now at a dead end. She believed that her father shouldn't leave. How happy it was to play with her friends on the mountain. "Don't you miss Sister Bebe?" Poplar Fruit suddenly asked. In the past, when Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe occasionally called, most of the time was occupied by Kiki. This time, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe gradually contacted each other more and more, while Kiki and Fong Bebe talked less and less. Sometimes, Poplar Fruit waved his hand to call the little girl who was playing, but she ran away without looking back. It couldn't be considered as forgetting the old when there is a new person. Kiki still liked Sister Bebe very much. She was just a child who was playing happily. It was impossible to make her change her mind and talk to the adults quietly. Kiki hesitated whether to respond to her bad father. After a moment of silence, she muttered, "Yes," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Then when we go home this time, we can see Sister Bebe again. Shouldn't Chi-Chi act a little happier? Otherwise, Sister Bebe will say, 'Hey, why doesn't Kiki smile when she sees Sister? Does she not like Sister anymore?' That's not it." Kiki tried hard to raise her head, pouted, and said, Kiki likes Sister Bebe the most." "Yeah." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Then, what should Kiki do when she sees Sister Bebe?" Kiki tilted her head and thought hard. Then she said, "Kiki will give Sister Bebe a kiss." "But your Sister Bebe doesn't like to see Kiki crying. Do you remember what Sister Bebe said?" Poplar Fruit guided her step by step. Sister Bebe said that she likes Kiki the most when she smiles. She's like a little fairy in the sky, very beautiful. Kiki bit her lower lip and pondered for a while. She pouted and clenched her fists like a little adult. She said softly, "Kiki, don't cry anymore." "That's right." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Kiki, pinky promise with Daddy. Don't be angry anymore. You have to see Sister Bebe happily, okay?" "Okay." Kiki nodded and Pinky promised her father's big right hand seriously. He finally got the little girl. Poplar Fruit breathed a sigh of relief. However, he had used Bebe to persuade Kiki and made himself miss her deeply. Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe were the same kind of people. Both of them were very affectionate. However, they were different from ordinary couples. The two of them wouldn't feel uncomfortable just because they didn't stick together every day. This didn't mean that the two of them didn't keep in touch. During the month-long journey, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe went from calling once every few days to talking on the phone every night. Although they hadn't seen each other for more than a month, the relationship between Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe didn't turn cold. Instead, it warmed up a lot. The most important thing was that the night before, because Poplar Fruit was in a hurry to explain everything to Fat Dragon and the others, he forgot to call for a while. Poplar Fruit remembered in the middle of the night and sent a text message to Fong Bebe to apologize. However, he found out that she was insomnia because she was worried about her gains and losses. Poplar Fruit later called to ask about Fong Bebe, and she fell asleep happily. Could it be that the two of them were already madly in love? That didn't seem like it. These two fellows, the content of their conversation had nothing to do with love. There was not a single word of sweet talk. On the phone, they talked and listened to what happened during the day, and then they gave each other ideas. It had to be said that these two top students were very interesting when they were together. Poplar Fruit wasn't good at math, but when he talked about math with Fong Bebe, he could quote from the classics. Fong Bebe's English wasn't good, but if Poplar Fruit talked about his performance at the seminar, Fong Bebe could also laugh and comment on Poplar Fruit. Okay, let's just say that this was especially sweet. We're finally back in Yongcheng. Just like the title of this volume, Fruit Spring. Xiao Han says that it's really coming. If some readers asked, then Xiao Han would like to explain. The title of the book is My Fairy Mississippi Miss is actually a pun. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the little one is obviously referring to Kiki. As for the big one, of course, it's the female lead. However, there's no doubt that Kiki's role is the most important. As you can see, Fong Bebe's scenes are much less than Kiki's. Xiao Han's fault, he didn't portray the female lead well enough. In the later plot, Xiao Han will work hard to make you guys like Bebe. Chapter 643. The insurance company that Mr. Guo recommended was really good. Poplar Fruit's Land Rover had been smashed by a rock, and after it was repaired, it had been running around for so many days without any problems. However, even if it was driving steadily on the highway, Poplar Fruit still felt that it was not enough. It was still too slow. The green forest by the roadside was like a slideshow, the neat green fields in the distance, and the winding Zhu River to the east. These beautiful scenery could not enter Poplar Fruit's eyes. He wanted to go home. Poplar Fruit's mind was filled with thoughts of going home. However, it had already taken 3 days on the way back. Poplar Fruit had only entered Guangdong province this morning. There was no other way. With only one person driving, Poplar Fruit could only drive for a few hours and rest for a few hours. At night, he still had to find a hotel for Kiki to rest. If it was Poplar Fruit alone, he could drive for more than 10 hours. However, there was still Kiki in the car, right? Poplar Fruit could not take the risk with his daughter. In fact, Poplar Fruit could have taken a plane back. Before he said goodbye to Fat Dragon, he had the idea of leaving the Land Rover for him. However, Fat Dragon was really lazy. He said that he did not need to go down the mountain, nor did he need to run errands elsewhere. There was no point in leaving the car behind. However, Poplar Fruit was more willing to believe that this guy was being petty. If Poplar Fruit was here, he would have pestered Poplar Fruit to go to the county to buy delicious food. The food on the mountain was not complimentary at all. Fat Dragon's real reason was that he did not want to drive back. He was tired from the long journey. Just thinking about it made him afraid. Almost there, almost there. At least I'll be back in Yongcheng by this afternoon. Poplar Fruit thought about it, and the corners of his mouth could not help but curl up slightly. Next, I'll arrange a small modeling assignment. You can form teams to complete it. 3 or 2 people are fine too. The deadline is next Monday. In the classroom, the teacher on the podium said while tidying up the computer, "This is the last homework before the competition. I hope you can complete it seriously and show the attitude of a competition." After the teacher left, the classroom became noisy. The voices of more than 10 people discussing were not low. "Bei, do you have a team?" A clean-looking boy pushed through the crowd and came to the front row to ask. Fong Bei was a little absent-minded. It took her a while to react. She shook her head and said, "Senior brother, I haven't formed a team yet." "Wang Di, Bei is my girl." The girl sitting at the same table as Fong Bei smiled and hugged Fong Bei's arm. The senior brother named Wang Di laughed and said, "Shen Hong, what are you afraid of? It's not like I'm going to steal your people." "Didn't the teacher say that it's okay to form a team with 3 people? Then the 3 of us can go together." Shen Hong turned to look at Fong Bei and asked, "Bei, what do you think?" Fong Bei was absent-minded. Shen Hong asked twice before she said with a red face, "If senior sister doesn't have any objections, I don't have any objections either." Shen Hong glanced at her classmate, Wang Di, who was looking at her with bright eyes. She shook her head and said unhappily, "Okay, you got lucky." Wang Di wanted to strike while the iron was hot. He said eagerly, "To celebrate our first team, how about we have lunch together this afternoon? It's my treat." Fong Bei shook her head subconsciously. Shen Hong was also not interested in eating with him. She waved her hand and said, "Forget it. We're sisters. Why are you, a man, getting involved?" Wang Di shrugged and did not insist. He said, "Okay, then I'll eat in the cafeteria alone." He changed the topic and said, "By the way, since we formed a team, we should set a time to discuss what to do, right?" This was a normal request. Shen Hong thought about it and said, "I'm going to the library to do some practice in the afternoon. Are you free tonight? I'll ask Auntie to lend us the activity room downstairs." School had not started yet, so there was no rush to use the activity room. "Sure," Wang Di said generously. "It's not appropriate for you 2 girls to come to the boys' dormitory. I'll sacrifice myself and have to deal with Abbess Miju. Tisk, as if you've never been here before." Shen Hong said disdainfully. "Isn't your girlfriend in our building? I've seen you waiting for her downstairs several times." Wang Di did not avoid it. He just corrected her seriously, "She's my ex-girlfriend. That's old news. Why are you still bringing it up?" "Senior sister, I can't tonight." Fong Bei held Shen Hong's hand and said coquettishly, "Can we discuss it tomorrow?" "Bei, is there anything going on tonight? Do you need senior brother's help?" Wang Di asked with concern. Fong Bei smiled. She shook her head and said, "Thank you, senior brother. It's just some personal matters." "Okay, if you have something to tell me." Wang Di carried his computer and waved his hand. "2 beauties. I'll go back first. Set a time and let me know on QQ. What's wrong?" As soon as Wang Di left, Shen Hong asked with concern, "Why are you so tired all day? Also, didn't you pull me to avoid Wang Di before? Why are you so abnormal today? You even agreed to team up with him." "Is it abnormal?" Fong Bei did not answer. Instead, she looked at Shen Hong curiously and asked, "I think it's okay. I was very serious in class just now." "Forget it, I don't care about you." Shen Hong gave her a dirty look and said, "Let's go eat." I'm starving. In fact, Fong Bei did not know what was wrong with her. Today, other than being fully focused in class, she was inexplicably floating in her own emotional world. Yesterday, Poplar Fruit said that he expected to be back today. Thinking of this, Fong Bei felt happy and was in a good mood. Soon, he would be able to see the cute Chi-Chi, as well as that stupid little golden retriever. Yes, there was also that bad weird uncle. Right. Too bad. After playing outside for so long, he still showed her pictures every day. It was simply infuriating. She was still in class during the holidays. Perhaps because she was in a good mood, Fong Bei did not reject Wang Di's request to team up for the first time. After joining the school's team, Wang Di often hung around Fong Bei. Although he did not shamelessly pester her, he was still very annoying. Senior sister Shan Hong helped to deal with him many times. It's nothing. Isn't it just forming a team to do homework? In fact, in the past 2 months, similar team homework had been done 3 times. The team composition was different, so Fong Bei did not care too much about forming a team this time. After having lunch with senior sister Shen Hong, Fong Bei wanted to go back to the dormitory to take a nap. However, as she walked, Fong Bei looked up and saw that she had unknowingly walked to the ground floor of the teacher's dormitory. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 644. Fong Bei blinked her beautiful eyes. She was a little confused. She didn't know how she got here. Shaking her head, Fong Bei didn't turn back. Instead, she hesitated for a moment, took out a bunch of keys from the side pocket of her small school bag, and unlocked the door downstairs naturally. She went upstairs, opened the door, put her shoes on the shoe rack at the entrance, and entered with her slippers. It was as if she had returned to her own home. It was very natural, and she didn't need to ask for permission. In fact, Fong Bei had been living here for 2 days. Coming back to school during the summer vacation was not a pleasant thing. She couldn't sleep in at home, and she couldn't eat the delicious food her mother made. Her roommates had all gone home, and she was the only one in the dormitory. At night, the dormitory felt empty, and she felt very insecure. The teacher's apartment rented by Poplar Fruit was right next to the school, and it was only a 10-minute walk from her dormitory. Fong Bei secretly stayed there for 1 night, and didn't go back. In fact, there was no one else in either room, but Fong Bei still felt that it was better to sleep in Poplar Fruit's room. Moreover, the desk in the room was left by the former professor. It was more efficient to study on it than to study in the library where so many students were squeezed together. Until 2 days ago, when Poplar Fruit said that he was coming back, Fong Bei reluctantly packed up her things and moved back to the dormitory. It was so familiar. She actually came back. However, since she was back, she might as well take a nap here. Anyway, the strange uncle hadn't come back yet. Humph, this was still her territory. Fong Bei walked in wearing her slippers. She mischievously flicked the red Chinese knot hanging on the bookshelf in the living room with her slender right index finger. She bought it when she was shopping. The style was much more complicated than ordinary Chinese knots. This was a concentric knot, which meant forever concentric. Of course, Fong Bei bought it because she thought it looked good. She only knew the meaning after looking it up on the internet. However, when she moved back, she didn't know if it was intentional or not, but she left the Chinese knot behind. Uncle, you should decorate this place a little. Otherwise, it would look gloomy and not nice at all. Fong Bei thought so. Humph, Uncle is so unartistic. He won't be able to tell if I'm placed in front of him. In addition to the concentric knot, there were several decorations left by Fong Bei in the room, such as the small porcelain vase on the desk. Fong Bei did not bring it back. She was like a lively elf, tiptoeing around the room. After inspecting the small things she had left behind, she ran back to the big bed in the bedroom to sleep. While Poplar Fruit was away, the bedroom was much cleaner, although Poplar Fruit was also very diligent in cleaning the room. Even the bed exuded the fragrance of green apples. Fong Bei Bei was very sleepy. She yawned and rolled on the bed, muttering, "When Uncle comes back, he will make the quilt smelly again." Umph. There was no fairy tale scene of the prince kissing the princess. In the afternoon, when Fong Bei Bei woke up with sleepy eyes, Poplar Fruit was still fighting on the highway. In the afternoon, the sun went in another direction. Except for the balcony, the bedroom was dark, as if the curtains were closed. It was quiet and sleepy, making people want to sleep again. However, Fong Bei Bei had a regular work and rest schedule. Although she was not as good as Poplar Fruit, at least she would not sleep in. She rolled on the bed and looked at the messy quilt. A trace of slyness flashed in her eyes. Ah! Ah! Fong Bei Bei jumped lightly onto the bed. The soft mattress did not hurt her feet. She pouted and kicked the quilt even more messily. Fong Bei Bei's bangs and sideburns were messy because of her excitement. She lifted her fair feet because of her flying kick. She opened her mouth wide and laughed wantonly because she imagined Poplar Fruit staring in shock at the room that seemed to have gone through a big battle. At this moment, Fong Bei Bei's image of an obedient girl was completely destroyed. She was just like my daughter who had not grown up. Fong Bei Bei was very happy to play. Anyway, no one was watching. So what if she was a little willful? However, after a while, Fong Bei Bei sat down dejectedly. She pouted and was a little unhappy. It was true that Uncle came back to Yongcheng today, but would he come here? Fong Bei Bei counted with her fingers. He had been on the road for 3 days straight. If it were her, the first thing she would do when she got home was to fall asleep on the big bed. As for Poplar Fruit, his home should be that big house. Otherwise, why didn't he move his things here? Fong Bei Bei patted her pillow and muttered to herself unhappily. When Fong Bei Bei talked to Poplar Fruit on the phone, she did not ask Poplar Fruit to come directly to the teacher's dormitory. It was only when she heard that Chen Anlin had come to Yongcheng and was staying at Poplar Fruit's house that she complained. Fong Bei Bei was not a long-winded person, but she did not know if Poplar Fruit would remember her request. She had no confidence because Mrs. Fong often scolded her father, saying that men always had bad memories. It doesn't matter if Uncle comes back or not. Fong Bei Bei suddenly jumped up. This time, she did not cause any trouble. Instead, she picked up the small quilt that she had kicked off earlier and folded it carefully. As if possessed, Fong Bei Bei deftly arranged the pillows and the sheets. Fong Bei Bei looked at these masterpieces with satisfaction. Then, she turned her head to look at the picture frame on the bookshelf. In the picture frame was a picture of Kiki. She made a funny face and said with a smile, "Kiki, if your papa doesn't come back, I'm going to take this house for myself." She pointed at the air as if Poplar Fruit was standing there. "Uncle, it's not your fault that you don't come back. Then don't blame me for taking advantage of you." Hee hee. Fong Bei Bei ran to the living room. She found her small school bag and took out the competition book to read. Fong Bei Bei was very good at mental arithmetic. Occasionally, she would draw a line or two on the draft, but her reading speed was still very fast. In less than 3 hours, she had turned over more than 20 pages. Raising her head, Fong Bei Bei looked at the sky. She was confused for a while and felt a little disappointed. "Forget it." Fong Bei Bei muttered, "I'll go buy vegetables and cook. I'll reward myself well. If he doesn't eat, well, it's his loss." After locking the door, Fong Bei Bei walked to the vegetable market. Along the way, many aunties and uncles greeted her. Because in the past month, she often bought vegetables and cooked for herself. The food at school was really hard to swallow, so the aunties who sold vegetables all recognized this cute girl who also knew how to buy vegetables. "Xiao Fong, do you have any guests today?" an auntie asked curiously. At this time, Fong Bei Bei realized that she had bought 2 servings of vegetables. Fong Bei Bei didn't put it back. Instead, she generously handed it over. She smiled and nodded to the auntie without any explanation. After buying fish, pork, and potatoes, Fong Bei Bei went back. As she walked, she touched a small belly and lamented, "Hey, why did I buy so much? Do I really want to get fat?" Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 645. Panting, Fong Bei Bei carried the heavy basket and climbed up the stairs. Then, after a long time, she used her left hand to take out the key from her right trouser pocket. The moment she took it out, Fong Bei Bei suddenly realized that she was so stupid that she almost cried. She opened the door with a clatter. It wasn't locked? I remember it was locked. Fong Bei Bei opened the door in confusion and saw a butt at the entrance. Before she could see clearly, a clear and pleasant voice suddenly sounded from the side. "Sister Bei Bei." "Kiki." Fong Bei Bei looked over in surprise. A small figure rushed over from the side and bumped into the woman who was pouting, causing her to stagger. Kiki immediately rushed over and excitedly hugged Fong Bei Bei's leg and jumped up and down. But the basket in Fong Bei Bei's hand was really heavy. She couldn't free her hands to hug Kiki. She could only cry out in surprise. Kiki, you're back?" Poplar Fruit, who had just been packing, got up from the ground. He smiled and said, "You went to buy groceries? I thought you went back to school. I was going to put away my things and change my clothes before going to find you." Poplar Fruit reached out his hand, and Fong Bei Bei naturally handed the basket in her hand to Poplar Fruit. She picked up Kiki, closed the door and said, "I didn't know Uncle would come back." "You didn't know?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head in confusion and asked, "Didn't I tell you last night?" Fong Bei Bei gave him a dirty look and said angrily, "Who knows which side you went back to?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said softly, "I remember you said to let me stay at the teacher's dormitory when I come back." A smile immediately appeared in Fong Bei Bei's eyes. However, Poplar Fruit added, "Besides, I haven't told Song Jiwen that I'm coming back. It's already so late. If we go back at this time, I'm afraid it'll be inconvenient for the girl." Fong Bei Bei knew that he was such a clumsy fellow, so she pushed him reproachfully and said, "All right, I know. Hurry up and put the vegetables down. They're so heavy." Before she could finish, the impatient Kiki turned Fong Bei Bei's face away. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. The little guy had a lot of things he wanted to tell Sister Bei Bei. But as soon as they met, Sister Bei Bei kept talking to his father. How could this be? The little guy was very jealous. Poplar Fruit smiled and looked at Kiki, who was sticking to Fong Bei Bei again. He left them some space and turned to the kitchen. When he left, he kicked Gold, who was sniffing around Fong Bei Bei's feet, and said with a smile, "What's wrong? We haven't seen each other for more than a month, and you don't recognize us anymore?" After putting the vegetables in the basket, Poplar Fruit was about to wash the vegetables. Fong Bei Bei came up with an apron and said, "Uncle, don't stay in the kitchen." Poplar Fruit was stunned for a while and said, "You want to cook?" "What? You think I can't cook, right?" Fong Bei Bei went up to Poplar Fruit and looked up at him with a fierce look in her eyes. No. Poplar Fruit quickly denied. In fact, he knew that Fong Bei Bei could cook, but it was a little ordinary. If she didn't pay attention, she might cook the vegetables. However, even if Poplar Fruit was a blockhead, he knew that he couldn't tell the truth at this time. Fong Bei Bei let go of Poplar Fruit's waist, raised her head and said, "Don't look down on me, understand?" Turning around, Fong Bei Bei skillfully picked the vegetables and said, "During this holiday, I asked my mother for real kung fu. If you still don't believe me, I won't let you eat later." Poplar Fruit nodded hard and said, I believe you. After that, he wanted to help, but Fong Bei Bei pushed him away. Don't stand here and watch." Fong Bei Bei stomped her feet and said, "Go and pack your things, then take a shower with Kiki, then we can eat. You're travel-worn now, you stink." Of course, this was an excuse. Fong Bei Bei always felt that Poplar Fruit, the chef, was standing behind her. As a new little chef, she felt a little guilty. She might as well cook it herself. If it was burnt, she could secretly throw it away. Poplar Fruit took it seriously. He smelled his clothes and walked out with a smile. In the end, just as he stepped out, Fong Bei Bei closed the glass door of the kitchen. Poplar Fruit could only obediently pack their luggage. Inside the luggage were the father and daughter's clothes and utensils, which were easier to pack. However, other than the luggage, there were also 2 big woven bags, which were specialties from the Miaowei people. This would take some time. Seeing Kiki run over in boredom, Poplar Fruit smiled and asked, "Kiki, didn't you say that you wanted to tell Sister Bei Bei your story? Why didn't you say anything?" Sister Bei Bei said that she wanted to cook. "Chi-Chi is also hungry," Chi-Chi said without raising her head as she leaned on the stool beside her father and looked at him. As Poplar Fruit was packing, he slapped Jeanzi, who was coming over, away to stop him from eating the cured pork in the bag. This was not the kind that could be found in ordinary shops. It was black pork raised in the mountains. Poplar Fruit had eaten it in the Miaowei village before, and it was very delicious. Occasionally, Poplar Fruit would raise his head and look in the direction of the kitchen. Fong Bei Bei happened to be looking at him as well, and their eyes met. Although they were separated by a blurry glass door, Poplar Fruit could only see Fong Bei Bei's shadow in his eyes at that moment. Fong Bei Bei was the same. When they first met, they did not show much affection because Kiki was in the middle. It was as if they had just gone out for a stroll. However, the longing for her after not seeing each other for more than a month had already set off a storm in their hearts. Only at that moment, separated by a glass door, did their emotions slowly extend in their eyes. It was as if they had each reached out an invisible hand and touched each other gently in the middle of their eyes. The warmth continued to evaporate under the warm light. The 2 of them looked at each other for more than 5 minutes, and their necks did not ache at all. Fong Bei Bei was the first to succumb to Poplar Fruit's passionate gaze. She blinked and turned her head away shyly. Fortunately, Fong Bei Bei was still washing the vegetables and had not officially started the fire. Otherwise, the vegetables in the pot would have turned into a black lump in these 5 minutes. Fong Bei Bei fiddled with the vegetables in the basin absent-mindedly. She did not notice that she had washed the piece of Shanghai green no less than 10 times. Other than washing it clean, there were also a few holes in the leaves. Poplar Fruit was still intoxicated by the atmosphere just now. Even if it was just looking at the person he liked, it was still blissful. He had just returned from a long journey and was tiredly packing his luggage. Fong Bei Bei was busy preparing dinner in the kitchen, and his daughter and the dog were making noise at the side. This feeling was really wonderful. Perhaps this was called home. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 646. Generally speaking, 2 people who had not seen each other for a long time would feel a little awkward. However, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei Bei's table did not have an oppressive silence. On the contrary, the 2 of them chatted very naturally, as if they had been eating together every day. In fact, that was not the case. Even before Poplar Fruit's confession, Fong Bei Bei's experience of the 2 of them eating together at Poplar Fruit's house could be counted on 2 hands. However, although they had not seen each other for a long time, they called each other every day. Their understanding of each other was not any less than that of a couple who spent every day together. Of course, this was also due to Kiki's contribution. Kiki kept waving her little hands at the table, interrupting the conversation between her father and Sister Bei Bei. The atmosphere changed from ambiguous pink to relaxed and joyful. Poplar Fruit took a grain of rice from his daughter's chubby little face and said with a smile, "Bei Bei, you asked your mother for advice on today's dishes, right? I remember that you don't know how to cook fish." "Of course, but I also made a little innovation of my own," Fong Bei Bei said proudly. "Are you talking about this little lemon?" Poplar Fruit pointed at the slices of lemon placed next to the fish fin and said with a smile, "That's just for decoration, right?" "What?" Fong Bei Bei put down her chopsticks and said angrily, "It's not just for decoration. Don't you think that the fishy smell has been covered a lot?" Poplar Fruit raised his eyebrows and said against his will, "Yes, it's indeed better." In fact, Poplar Fruit felt that the fish was really ordinary. Because it was steamed freshwater fish, there was no shredded ginger to remove the fishy smell of the fish. Also, the fish was steamed for too long and was not fresh enough. Anyway, in his opinion, the shortcomings far outweighed the advantages. However, Poplar Fruit was picky when it came to food. It was really good for a beginner to be able to cook at this level. How could he compare with a chef like him in everything? Poplar Fruit pondered for a while and thought it through. He sincerely praised Fong Bei Bei for her improvement, which made Fong Bei Bei feel very happy for the whole night. That's right. Who would spend so much effort to prepare a table of dishes just to get the other party's comments? Other than those who learn to be chefs, which girl didn't want to receive a warm response from their kind intentions? He seemed to have learned something. Poplar Fruit made a mental note. Although his EQ was a little low, he was still very active in seeking improvement in front of the woman he loved. "Uncle, what's your plan for tomorrow?" Fong Bei Bei gave Kiki a piece of vegetable and asked her to eat it. Then she asked Poplar Fruit. In fact, when Fong Bei Bei asked this question, she already knew the answer. Just now when Poplar Fruit called Song Jiwen, Fong Bei Bei was serving the dishes at the side. "I'm going back to meet my friends and have a meal." Poplar Fruit said, "By the way, I'll move some clothes over here." Chen Anlin? Fong Bei Bei was very wary of this name. Poplar Fruit nodded and said honestly, "Mosquito said she's at home and asked her out tomorrow." Fong Bei Bei didn't say anything. She just looked at him. If she didn't bite her lower lip, how seductive would her pretty face be? Poplar Fruit couldn't resist. He laughed and said, "Actually, I'm not very familiar with her. She also practices Tai Chi, and her Kung Fu is not bad. This time, there's Mosquito." Fong Bei Bei actually knew Poplar Fruit's character. She also knew that Poplar Fruit wasn't the kind of person who would fall in love with anyone he saw, but she just didn't know. "Why don't you come with us? 2 guys and 2 girls are just right." Seeing Fong Bei Bei's expression, Poplar Fruit had an idea and said, "I'm not going." Fong Bei Bei jumped up all of a sudden. She said with a smile, "I won't disturb Uncle from picking up girls." The veins on Poplar Fruit's forehead jumped. If it weren't for Kiki, he would have knocked this guy's head. What was he thinking? Kiki gnawed on the Shanghai green in her hand. Saliva and vegetable juice dripped down, staining her chin and the bib on her chest. She turned her head and looked at her father with her big, innocent eyes. She didn't know why her father's aura had changed. Poplar Fruit said helplessly, "What are you thinking? It's really just a meal between friends." "Hey, didn't I bring Kiki with me? What can she do?" "Hoo-hoo, you always use Kiki as a cover. Didn't you always rely on Kiki to act cute to trick me into coming over?" Fong Bei Bei ridiculed in her heart. This little girl's skin was very thin. Although she ridiculed, Fong Bei Bei's heart was actually very sweet. She felt that Poplar Fruit cared about her. After seriously considering Poplar Fruit's suggestion, Fong Bei Bei shook her head and said awkwardly, "Really, I can't do it tomorrow. I want to discuss the homework with the senior brothers and sisters." After rejecting senior sister Shan Hong's suggestion tonight, Fong Bei Bei felt a little embarrassed. No matter what, she couldn't leave the team tomorrow. There were only 2 days left before the homework was due. If she spent another day with Poplar Fruit outside, senior sister Shan Hong would have a problem with it. Fong Bei Bei also explained the importance of the homework to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit nodded and smiled. "It's okay. You're about to go abroad for a competition. You're not only representing yourself, but also our school and even our country. Do your best." Fong Bei Bei nodded seriously. Poplar Fruit took care of the dishes while Fong Bei Bei accompanied Kiki to talk in the living room. As they wiped the water off their hands, they returned to the living room. Poplar Fruit saw Kiki hugging Fong Bei Bei's neck intimately and was extremely envious. Fong Bei Bei seemed to sense something. She glanced at Poplar Fruit and then followed Poplar Fruit's gaze. She lowered her head and saw Kiki's small hand on her chest. Bang! Fong Beibei's cheeks flushed red. She raised her right hand and gently moved the Lushan's claw away. Then she threw a threatening look at Poplar Fruit. Uncle, if you dare to say anything, you're dead. At this time, they could only change the topic. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei talked about the long-distance education that Poplar Fruit was currently busy with. If you're not there, what if something goes wrong? Fong Beibei asked worriedly. It's not a problem. Uncle Meng will help with the government. Fat Dragon and Kai Si Min are both experts in technology. The people in Meng Village are in charge of the engineering. I won't be able to help much even if I stay there. Poplar Fruit smiled. Fong Beibei nodded in agreement. Indeed, you can't do it yourself. But what are you in charge of? Poplar Fruit replied, in Yongcheng, I'll set up the platform at the other end of our long-distance education. I'll probably rent a house. Then, I'll ask the dean if I can find a few students to form a charity club. All right. Poplar Fruit slapped his thigh and smiled. The most important thing right now is to buy a computer. I left my computer in Meng Village for Fat Dragon to use. Fat Dragon and Kai Si Min did not bring their own computers over. It was not suitable to use the Comet computer for large-scale programming. The configuration could not keep up. Therefore, Poplar Fruit left the new computer that he bought less than a month ago in Xiong Village. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 647. Why are you looking at me like that? Under the gaze of Fong Beibei's beautiful eyes, which were as pure as spring water, Poplar Fruit couldn't handle it anymore. It wasn't because he was guilty, nor was it because he was afraid that his thoughts would be exposed. It was because he really didn't know why Fong Beibei would suddenly stare at him while talking. You don't have any money, right? Fong Beibei asked softly. I do. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, how can I not have money? There's definitely not much left. Fong Beibei said without hesitation. She used her arm to hold Kiki, and used 2 fingers to count for Poplar Fruit. Look, on that card of yours before, there was more than 19 million, right? Poplar Fruit nodded. $3 million was converted into RMB, and with his original savings, it was indeed that much. When you were in Beijing, you invested $5 million in Wanhe. Fong Beibei paused, and looked at Poplar Fruit with some inexplicable emotions. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, yeah, I told you before. Poplar Fruit felt that there was nothing to hide about this. When he was talking to Fong Beibei about the video where he and Kiki made a cameo appearance, he casually mentioned it. He didn't expect Fong Beibei to remember it. Then, Lu Dong invested 2 million, and Fat Dragon, you also gave him 1 million. Poplar Fruit nodded every time Fong Beibei said something. Although you don't have shares in your family's factory and online store, you still invested a few $100,000. There's also the money to repair the house and give to your parents. Although I don't know how much, it should be around 1 million in total, right? Fong Beibei said, there's also your own expenses, the insurance for Kiki, and the investment for the education fund. Kiki's was paid in installments, Poplar Fruit reminded. I know, I've already spent $500,000, Fong Beibei calculated, and then continued, there's also the house you bought. Poplar Fruit was dumbfounded. He remembered that he didn't tell Fong Beibei about this. Not only Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit also hid it from everyone, because he spent a lot of money to buy the house. At first, when he bought insurance for Kiki, he thought he should buy her a house. Then, he found a few new houses. In the end, he was attracted by a house. Poplar Fruit had a special desire. When he was young, he especially wanted to live in a house. Now, his house was a 3-story house, but that was his hometown. In Yongcheng, the house that left the deepest impression on Poplar Fruit was Big Brother He's house. However, a house like that was expensive in Yongcheng. It wasn't that Poplar Fruit couldn't afford it. He gritted his teeth and bought a house in the suburbs without needing a loan. However, buying a house in the suburbs meant that it was inconvenient. It would take 2 to 3 hours to drive back to school, and that was under the condition that there were no traffic jams. Since a house was unrealistic, Poplar Fruit could only think of a house. Song Jiwen's house was very beautiful. It had 2 floors, and it could be considered a house. Therefore, when Poplar Fruit saw the house that the real estate sales lady showed him, he couldn't stay calm. There was a small garden, and the lighting and north and south orientation were very good. Of course, the price wasn't cheap either. However, Poplar Fruit's concept of money was a little vague at that time, so he impulsively took out the money, and it was the full amount. "How did you know?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head and asked. "I saw it." Fong Bei giggled. "Your contract was on the table, and you didn't even tidy it up." "I really forgot about it." Poplar Fruit shrugged and said, "It hasn't been handed over yet. It will be handed over in March next year, and then I will have to spend money to find someone to renovate it." Fong Bei wasn't interested in this. She was calculating Poplar Fruit's remaining money. "You bought that house for 3 million and you spent 2 million on the Miao village. At least that much." Fong Bei said confidently, "There might be some expenses, but I estimate that you only have a little more than 1 million left." "You can even calculate that." Poplar Fruit took out his mobile phone and looked at the text message from the bank, exclaiming. In terms of calculating ability, Fong Bei was hundreds of miles ahead of Poplar Fruit. "Let me tell you." Fong Bei pulled Kiki's right arm and scratched it like a fortune cat. However, the little girl couldn't sit still and struggled to jump down. "She can't stay still after going out for a while." Poplar Fruit complained. "It's the same when she's in the car. She always wants to run out to play. She's a child." "Of course, she's like that." Fong Bei laughed. "Do you dare say that when you were a child, when your mother told you to sit on the stool and do your homework, you wouldn't secretly get up to take a look at the TV?" "When I was a child, I didn't have a TV at home." Poplar Fruit was very honest. I'm just giving you an example." Fong Bei rolled her eyes at him and said angrily, "I'll give you this." Fong Bei jumped up from the sofa and ran to the desk. She picked up her small bag and took out a wallet. She opened the zipper and took out a card and handed it to Poplar Fruit. The card looked very familiar. It was exactly the same as Poplar Fruit's card. Wasn't it the card that Poplar Fruit gave to Fong Bei after returning from America? "Why are you giving it to me?" Poplar Fruit asked superfluously. Don't you want to do distance education? The remaining money is definitely not enough. Besides, you're going abroad. If you don't bring some money, you'll be looked down upon by others." Fong Bei said generously, "After you gave me this card, I haven't used it." "No, I don't want it." Poplar Fruit shook his head firmly and said, "After 2 months, the money will be earned back. You can keep the money for yourself. You're going abroad too. Buy yourself something you like." How could he take a woman's money? Poplar Fruit was not very traditional. However, in China, even in modern society, men were the ones paying for things. How could a woman give a man a bank card? "I don't know how to use this card even if I keep it." Fong Bei pushed Poplar Fruit and advised him not to be stubborn. "Why don't I do something nice for you?" "All right, I'm not asking you to spend it." Fong Bei waved her small fist. Compared to Poplar Fruit, it was indeed small. She smiled and said, "If I find out that you're spending it on alcohol and women, I won't forgive you." It was not a threat at all. Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment and took it. Then, he took out his own card and put it in Fong Bei's hand. He said seriously, "Well, I'll keep it for you. You can use this card. Going abroad always costs money." Fong Bei did not stand on ceremony with him. She took it graciously. Without wearing slippers, she tiptoed to her small bag and put it away. She looked very happy. Poplar Fruit felt Bei's trust, which made him feel a little touched. At the same time, he repeated the promise he had just made in his heart. "If you don't betray me, I won't betray you." This principle was correct. However, The atmosphere that should have been pink and ambiguous was turned into a solemn ceremony by two serious guys. He was drunk. Looking for monthly votes. Looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to, asterisk. Chapter 648. It's getting late, I have to go back. Fong Bei looked at her watch, stood up and said. Unknowingly, it was already past 10 o'clock. Kiki had already fallen asleep on the sofa. Poplar Fruit just carried her back to the bedroom. If Kiki didn't fall asleep, Poplar Fruit could let Kiki act coquettishly and make Fong Bei stay. Even if Fong Bei stayed, Poplar Fruit wouldn't do anything. But, isn't it enough to be with the person you like? Is there anyone in the dormitory yet? Poplar Fruit also stood up and asked with concern. Shanshan will come back next Tuesday. She's the earliest. Fong Bei said. Next Wednesday, the new students will enter the school. She's here to be a volunteer, right? Poplar Fruit keenly grasped the key point. He was an experienced person, but he knew that except for these diligent volunteers, no one would be willing to come early. It's already good to be able to come back on the last day of registration. Fong Bei nodded. Her eyes turned, looked at Poplar Fruit and said, Uncle, don't tell me you want Shanshan to welcome you? Although you're also a new student, you're more familiar with the school than any of us. You can't bully Shanshan. Why would I? Poplar Fruit laughed. I just think that you're the only one in the dormitory. I'm worried that you'll be scared when you go back. Then what should I do? I can't live here, right? Fong Bei looked at Poplar Fruit. Her long eyelashes flickered on her bright eyes. Avoiding Fong Bei's sight, Poplar Fruit said shamelessly, Sure, as long as you don't mind. After saying that, he felt a little frivolous and quickly added, What I mean is, you can sleep in the bedroom. I'll just make a bed in the living room. No need, Fong Bei said with a smile. I'd better go back. My clothes are still in the dormitory. Thank you, Uncle. I know you're a good person. Poplar Fruit was stunned. He rubbed his index finger with his left thumb. He was given the good guy card just like that. Something's not right. Isn't this the wrong choice of words? Regardless of whether he was right or wrong, Poplar Fruit's confidence collapsed for the time being. I'm leaving. Fong Bei saw that Poplar Fruit didn't respond. She waved her hand and walked towards the door with her small bag. Let me send you off. Poplar Fruit was anxious and quickly followed. It's only 2 steps. Fong Bei walked in front. Although she said that, her face was full of smiles. She didn't have the slightest intention of refusing. It was past 10 o'clock. It was the busiest time of the night market outside Higashiyama University's Little North Gate. After going downstairs and leaving the teacher's dormitory, Poplar Fruit and Fong Bei felt the crowd. Not only was it noisy, but there was also a wave of heat from the crowd. This night market was opened in a small alley behind the Little North Gate for the convenience of the students. The alley was already very narrow. The shops were trying their best to move the chairs outwards. There were also all kinds of mobile stalls in the middle of the road. As a result, some places were so crowded that only 3 people could walk sideways. Poplar Fruit naturally walked in front to open the path for Fong Bei. Fong Bei also followed behind Poplar Fruit, tightly holding onto the corner of Poplar Fruit's shirt. However, there were still too many people. At this time, the students who came to the university early in the morning all came here to eat supper. They were preparing to go back and fight another 500 rounds at night. Therefore, Fong Bei was still pushed around by the crowd. Poplar Fruit was strong. He used one arm to help Fong Bei block the crowd, and Fong Bei squeezed into Poplar Fruit's arms. Poplar Fruit's arm was actually just a prop, but no matter how you looked at it, the two of them were still hugging each other. Fortunately, this scene didn't last long. Poplar Fruit walked through the alley with Fong Bei, and then entered the university through the Little North Gate. The crowd suddenly decreased. So comfortable. The cool night breeze blew, and the stuffy heat brought by the barbecue stall, and the crowd was finally swept away. Fong Bei also jumped out of Poplar Fruit's arms, one hand holding a small bag, the other hand raised high, and was very happy in front. Poplar Fruit stood quietly behind, and didn't participate in Fong Bei's cheers. He just silently looked at the young girl in front of him. Just like her lively and kind personality, Fong Bei had a beauty that was different from other girls, and also deeply attracted Poplar Fruit. However, Poplar Fruit was a little hesitant today. He didn't know why, but maybe it was because of what Fong Bei just said, "I know you are a good person." Fong Bei suddenly turned her head and found Poplar Fruit standing alone behind her in a daze. She curiously walked over. Being sensitive, she immediately sensed the oppressive aura around Poplar Fruit. Fong Bei frowned slightly and asked, "Hey, uncle, what's wrong?" "Oh, nothing. I was just thinking about something." Poplar Fruit was awakened by Fong Bei's shout. He smiled and recovered his usual amiable smile, and walked over to Fong Bei. "Nothing, how could it be nothing?" Fong Bei could see that there was something wrong with the conflicted look on his face just now. In fact, Poplar Fruit was indeed fine. He just had some thoughts, but when he saw Fong Bei's reflection under the light, Poplar Fruit thought it through. Good things come with setbacks, I can't be impatient. Therefore, Poplar Fruit returned to normal and cheerfully told Fong Bei about the interesting things that happened on this campus when he was still a student. The more natural Poplar Fruit acted, the more uneasy Fong Bei felt. Fong Bei didn't even listen to what Poplar Fruit said. She felt that Poplar Fruit's smile was forced, and that he would disappear on the uneven campus road when he turned around. Poplar Fruit was overthinking things, and now Fong Bei was overthinking things. Often, these coincidences would trigger some wonderful chemical reactions. Like now. Fong Bei bit her lower lip, lowered her head, and followed Poplar Fruit to the right. "What's wrong? Why are you unhappy?" Poplar Fruit also felt that Fong Bei's mood wasn't right. He lowered his head and asked softly, "Nothing." Fong Bei reached out her left hand, pulled Poplar Fruit's right hand over, and hugged it naturally. Poplar Fruit's heart suddenly thumped. He wanted to laugh because the happiness in his heart was about to erupt. However, he didn't dare to laugh, afraid that his exaggerated expression would scare Fong Bei. Poplar Fruit's expression was a bit distorted because he didn't control his expression well. However, Fong Bei didn't raise her head. Her face was flushed red, and she was too embarrassed to raise her head. "Let's go." Fong Bei stomped her feet and pouted. Oh. Overjoyed, Yang's thoughts short-circuited. It was as if she was being dragged by her as she walked towards Fong Bei's dormitory in a daze. Next chapter. Looking for monthly votes? Looking for recommendations? Carrot asterisk. Chapter 649. With Fong Bei hugging his arm, Poplar Fruit was so happy that he almost fainted. But time seemed to pass very quickly. In the blink of an eye, Fong Bei's dormitory was right in front of them. When they got here, there were very few people around. No, it should be said that there was no one around. Other than the dim light at the entrance of the corridor, the surroundings were pitch black. It was so quiet that even the sound of cicadas seemed to be very far away. Standing on the small path, if they continued to walk forward, they would reach the dormitory door. The two of them stopped at the same time. Poplar Fruit lowered his head and looked at Fong Bei's fragrant and soft long hair, as well as her round and jade-like ears under the dim light. Poplar Fruit's heart couldn't help but beat faster. "Uncle, I have to go back." Fong Bei raised her head. Her eyes revealed a rare gentleness when she looked at Poplar Fruit. She hugged Poplar Fruit's arm and gently shook it. But she didn't have any intention of letting go. Poplar Fruit was still in a daze. Because the summer shirt was short and thin, Poplar Fruit could clearly feel the cool and soft touch on his arm. He absent-mindedly nodded and said, okay. Fong Bei then gently let go of Poplar Fruit's arm and smiled sweetly. Poplar Fruit was in a daze again. It was as if the world in his eyes was covered with blooming flowers. "We're really leaving." Fong Bei Bei put her hands behind her back and cheerfully tiptoed. Poplar Fruit didn't move. He just stood there with a silly smile. Uncle became stupid. Giggling in her heart, Fong Bei Bei turned around and walked towards the dormitory. She thought, took 2 steps forward and looked at Poplar Fruit's silly look. The moment Fong Bei Bei turned around, Poplar Fruit's mind suddenly became clear. It was as if he had never been so clear before. He didn't think twice. He took a big step forward and grabbed Fong Bei Bei's hand. Wait. Poplar Fruit seemed to have used up all his courage. And that moment of clarity also burned away all his wisdom. His mouth became very clumsy. Bei Bei. Bei Bei, I have something to say to you. Fong Bei Bei stopped. She hesitantly and slowly turned around. In the shadow, Fong Bei Bei couldn't see her face clearly, but she knew that her cheeks were as hot as a boiled egg. Fong Bei Bei seemed to have a premonition of what was going to happen next, but at this time, she had lost her instinct to think. She couldn't control her beating heart at all. Bei Bei. Poplar Fruit swallowed his saliva. Looking at Fong Bei Bei's lowered head, he was very nervous. Fong Bei Bei raised her head and met Poplar Fruit's fiery eyes. She looked away like a frightened rabbit. Poplar Fruit said incoherently, "Last time, didn't you say that the probation period would be 2 months? 2 months have passed." Fong Bei Bei lowered her head and looked at her shoes. Compared with Poplar Fruit's big feet, they seemed to be much smaller. Fong Bei Bei didn't respond, so Poplar Fruit had to continue. "I didn't understand before, but now I understand. I have been thinking about it every day for the past 2 months, and I finally understand that I like you. The one I like is you. It has nothing to do with Kiki. No, I also like you very much when you are with Kiki. It's just that the more important reason is that I like you, and I like being with you." Poplar Fruit stuttered. His words were a mess, and he couldn't find any logic at all. This confession was far worse than the one 2 months ago. Poplar Fruit wanted to slap himself twice. He didn't prepare anything and spoke so rashly. However, he still had to finish what he wanted to say. Poplar Fruit lowered his voice, as if he was afraid that he would disturb the beauty if he spoke too loudly. "Bei Bei, I have already thought it through. I like you. Now, are you willing to be my girlfriend now?" Fong Bei Bei lowered her head, so Poplar Fruit couldn't see her expression clearly. However, after he finished speaking, Fong Bei Bei still didn't move and didn't respond. Poplar Fruit only felt that his heart gradually sank from the anxiety of anticipation to the bitterness of disappointment. "Am I too anxious?" Poplar Fruit began to reflect on himself. It seemed like... Poplar Fruit recalled what Fong Bei Bei had said before he came out. "Uncle, I know that you are a good person." Maybe she still wasn't ready to accept him. Poplar Fruit felt a little bitter in his mouth. However, looking at Fong Bei Bei's thin shoulders, Poplar Fruit's heart floated again, as if the soft part of his heart had been touched. "Okay." Fong Bei Bei's left hand, which was held by Poplar Fruit, moved slightly. Her other soft hand also closed, holding Poplar Fruit's fingers and playing with them like a child. "It's okay. It's okay if you refuse. Don't feel burdened. I haven't done well enough. I will continue to work hard." Poplar Fruit was immersed in his own reflection, so he didn't pay attention to Fong Bei Bei's words. As soon as Fong Bei Bei spoke, Poplar Fruit comforted her as if it was a conditioned reflex. The more Fong Bei Bei listened, the more she felt that something was amiss. She raised her head, and the shy look on her face disappeared without a trace. She pinched Yong's finger with her right hand, interrupting his nagging. She said angrily, "Hey, what are you talking about?" "Huh?" Poplar Fruit blinked, and didn't respond. However, in the end, he still had the gift of photographic memory. Yong was slightly retraced his memory. His mouth was wide open, and he looked at Fong Bei Bei in disbelief. Her cheeks were flushed, and she was especially charming. You're saying that you've agreed? Poplar Fruit's heart beat violently again. There was a kind of ecstasy that seemed to erupt from the deepest part of his heart, rushing all the way to the top of his head. If you didn't hear it, then forget it, Fong Bei Bei said angrily. However, her tone betrayed her expression. That light tone didn't sound like she was angry at all. Instead, it sounded like she was acting coquettishly with her boyfriend. Fong Bei Bei's hand was still holding Poplar Fruit's hand. However, the current position was more like she was holding onto Poplar Fruit's big hand, and not being passively held by Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit's big hand moved slightly, and with just a pinch of his fingers, Fong Bei Bei's petite hand was completely held in his own palm. His thick big palm clenched, and held tightly. Of course, Poplar Fruit still paid attention to his own strength, and didn't let Fong Bei Bei feel any discomfort. How could that be? I heard it, of course I heard it. You can't go back on your words. Poplar Fruit lowered his head to look at Fong Bei Bei, and said with a grin, Uncle, are you especially happy, especially proud? Fong Bei Bei pulled her hand out, tiptoed, and suddenly grabbed Poplar Fruit's ear, and said with a pout. Poplar Fruit didn't dodge, although Fong Bei Bei's speed wasn't fast at all in his eyes. He let Fong Bei Bei grab onto his ear, and then looked at Fong Bei Bei in a daze. Fong Bei Bei wasn't as tall as Poplar Fruit even when she tiptoed, so it was a little difficult for her to grab onto Poplar Fruit's ear. The distance between the two was a little close. From Poplar Fruit's angle, he could see Fong Bei Bei's soft little mouth. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Greater than over equal to asterisk. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.